What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. Now, today I've got for you some of the very best entitled people stories of 2024. If you've been around on my channel for a long time now, you'll know that entitled people and entitled parents content has been some of my favorite videos to make for over 5 years now, nearly 6 years. So it's an absolute pleasure to showcase some of the most insane entitled people stories of the last 365 days in this episode. Without further ado, let's get into it. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Here we go. My entitled brother threw a massive fit just because he was mad I bought a house. Yeah, so I'm aware of several similar stories involving entitled family members wanting houses they have no claim to. But I guess this stuff really happens. And it's no picnic when it does. I suddenly became a homeowner some time ago because a friend of mine's grandfather was moving to Florida and his house was ripe for picking. I knew the old man well. RIP, he passed a few months later from a sudden stroke. Anyway, he offered the house and property to me for $200K. I practically ran to the bank to apply for the loan. The house is a manufactured home from the 80s, but it was remodeled repeatedly by the former owner and has a separate garage building. The home and property could have gone for more, but he offered the house to me because he knew I'd take care of it. I had $30K saved that made a good down payment, and I was happy to leave my apartment. I'd wanted to eventually move out of there after what my cheating ex did anyway, but that's a story for another time. As for my brother, well, he went bonkers when he found out I bought a house. He had this repeated history of copycatting me for the past decade. But there was no way in heck he could copycat buying a house with his terrible credit and inconsistent income, and he got in an argument with me over how I was just trying to make him look bad by doing something he couldn't. No, I just wanted a dang house, and the price was too good to refuse. Then he told me I should have turned it down because he had no good reason. I could practically see his screws getting looser with every dumb excuse he made as to why I shouldn't have done it. But I pointed out all those excuses were just because I did something he currently can't. And when I bought the house, it had nothing to do with him. I just wanted to be a homeowner for the security and extra space. I finally don't have to store my camper at my parents' house, and I have a garage that I can store stuff and tinker in. I bought a camping cot, he bought a camping cot. I went to the gym, he went to the gym. I bought good booze, he bought good booze, or stole it from me. I bought a new TV, he bought a new TV. I bought a truck, he bought a truck. I bought a camper, he bought a camper. I bought a used portable DVD player. Guess what? He bought a used portable DVD player. I went camping in a specific place, he went camping in that specific place. I bought a house, he 404 error, insert tea kettle noises and Benny Hill chase. He also acted like a complete child towards me when he built his mini ram thing. He actually confronted me and said it was cooler than my boring Tundra because it was something original. I swear, he did the dumbest mods to that vehicle, like putting twist studs in the suspension coils to raise the ride heights. Well, after weeks of openly fuming about me being a homeowner, my brother suddenly acted like he had another brilliant idea. He wanted to move in with me. I laughed at him. Then he ended up demanding that I rent one of my rooms to him, and for only $200 a month, utilities included, because he shouldn't have to pay any more than that since we're family. He flipped his lid when I said, frick no. Then he got our parents involved again. Only this time, they actually sided with him at first, though it was mainly our mother. She and my brother showed up, demanding I let my brother move in, and my brother had a poop-eating grin on his face that I could tell he was thinking he was getting his way thanks to Mummy Dearest. I said, F no, to both their faces, and my mother cried that I was using foul language to her and being a jerk when I had the space now. I called my dad, and he told my mum that he'd warned her I wouldn't do it, and to leave me the heck alone. Mum whined that my brother was living out of his camper next to a shabby house he was renting space from. But I said that wasn't my problem to fix, and my brother has proven countless times that he cannot be trusted. My brother was fuming to the point of being red with veins popping out. My mum tried one more time to convince me with tears, and that just made me angrier. I went on a rant that was something like this. Bro can't buy a house, so he wanted to invade mine. I refused to ever live with my brother again. I would sooner live in the woods without electricity than with him. He's intentionally irritating as heck, and if I had him as a roommate, I just knew he'd steal my booze, take my stuff, and invade my privacy non-stop. Not freaking happening. No matter how many tears mum tries using on me. My mum broke down and finally conceded that she'd never convince me after that rant. And she had to take my brother by the hand and leave with him because he initially refused to go and kept begging her to turn back and make me let him move in. And then I yelled to him that it was a laugh that he called me a mama's boy before because he'd become exactly that. And this was just at the time he tried to get our mother to make me trade vehicles with him because he felt ashamed to be driving a minivan. He yanked away from mum, then told me to go and screw myself and the horse I rode in on. I laughed and pointed out I didn't ride in on anything because I was already home, but his rattle-can horse was waiting for him in the driveway. He flipped his lid again and looked like his head was going to explode, but mum got in front of him and told him to just go. Then he drove off in his rattle-can Silverado without her. He'd driven her there, so then I had to take her home. While taking her home, I made things very clear with my mother over why I could never trust my brother again, and his life was not my burden to bear. And then I told her how little my brother was offering for rent anyway, which he'd conveniently not told her. Then I later rented that same room to one of my best friends for $600 a month, and he pays for utilities. The other 2 rooms are my bedroom and a home office. There's an extra room in the separate garage too. So, my mother tried to make me let my brother live in the garage instead. There's enough room in its storage room for a bedroom. Again, I said frick no, and that's since been turned into another friend's rented room with a bit of plywood remodel. Yeah, I kind of rented both the spare bedroom and garage room out to friends out of spite, but I wasn't letting my brother live with me in any capacity. And also, to be fair, if you are able to do that and then make some more money, why would you not do that? It's so good. Yeah, you have the spite on the one hand, but also you're making money to pay back your mortgage. It's brilliant. And you don't have to live with your brother. It's a win-win-win. My brother later ended up having a complete meltdown in front of our parents over how he's the older brother. He should be the one who owns a house first. He's supposed to be successful, and I'm supposed to be the big loser in his shadow. Our dad poked him with his cane and told him that's not how life works, and they had a big argument. They told him to get out and not come back until he's cooled off and learn that he's just being a pointlessly jealous jerk. Now, the next part I post, my brother did the dumbest thing of all. Okay, so there we go. Don't worry, we are going to get into that second story, but just off the rip, after looking at what I've just seen there, what a terrible person your brother is. I'm thankful, to be honest, that your dad isn't in the same vein as your mum and enabling this behavior. You can definitely see where your brother's got this entitled mentality from. It's definitely not from your dad. But yeah, I'm happy that at least one of your parents is sane. I think this is just typical golden child syndrome. He feels like the most important person in the family for some reason. Maybe he has been enabled in the past by your mum, but yeah, the quicker he learns that that isn't the way the world works, and your dad's right, like poke him with the cane again. It doesn't matter how old you are. It's about what you do in your life and how successful you've been, and if you have the money to buy a house, go and buy a house. I mean, you can buy a house at 18, you can buy a house at 90, you know? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. If you got the money, do it. There's no rite of passage. There's no, oh, I'm older than you, therefore I have to buy a house first. If you had the means to do it, you would have done it. But you didn't. That's tough. So anyway, here is that second post which OP referenced at the end of his first one. The time my brother got petty revenge on a neighbor with a chocolate turd. Yes, a chocolate turd. When my brother and I were growing up, he wasn't so bad. We had at least 4 different families live in the house next door since it was a rental. Well, the family that lived there around the time I was 12 were just awful people. And they intentionally trained their dog to poop in other people's yards. My dad hashed it out with them many times and even threatened to call the cops. Now, the kids of these people were also brats. They were 2 boys like us and of similar ages. They stole our bikes for a joyride since they'd broken theirs. My dad had to make the parents return our bikes, and then we got called snitches. Fortunately, both of these boys were just as hated at school, so they eventually stopped talking to us. After months living next door to these people, their dog was still pooping in our yard. They were forced to clean up the poop several times, and another neighbour did call the cops on them about their dog. One day, we find out their landlord was not renewing their lease, and they were to be gone in a month. My brother, the schemer he is, took some chocolate candy bars and carefully melted and shaped them to look like turds. They were fairly convincing looking as dog poop from a distance. My brother set up the fake poo in our front yard and then waited for the family to get home. Then yelled at them that their dog did it again, then proceeded to eat the fake poo right in front of them. one of them threw up, and then they all threw up. And my brother milked it by talking about how tasty it was in detail. We didn't find any poop from their dog in our yard for the next couple of weeks before they moved out. That was really not what I was expecting, but wow, phenomenal from your brother, I suppose. Although really quite weird, to be quite honest. Okay, so yeah, a slightly different second story to the first one there. And I've got to say, I put some respect back on your brother's name after that. That was good. Now, again, I've got to say, a little bit weird. However, at least it's like funny rather than just going crazy and saying, oh, my brother's got a house before me. No, I want that house. I want to move in for next to no money. That is more enjoyable and a good prank. Imagine seeing that, not realizing obviously that it's chocolate, and seeing your neighbor eating your dog's poo off his front lawn. That's going to really mess with you upstairs, isn't it? And yeah, beautiful right there. He should be doing more of that, your brother, OP, and less of the first story. Anyway, we've got time for one more post. Let's get into it. To the two entitled brats that disturbed a flight from Iceland to Canada and caused a delay, I hope you're banned for life. I was on a recent flight from Iceland to Canada, and minutes before takeoff, literally as the hostess was doing safety demonstration, a girl jumps out of her seat and interrupts her to tell her she forgot her purse in the airport with her passport in it, asking if she can just go and get it. She was hyperventilating. The hostess asks her to sit down and calm down, and she goes to inform the crew. Then another crew member comes over, and lo and behold, the story changes into, no, I have my passport, but I need the purse because I have medication in it. Okay, immediately, I have massive doubts over this. I don't think you can get onto a plane without having your passport. I mean, when you go through the final gate, everyone has their passport checked, right? It would be impossible, I think, to board the plane without having it, unless you somehow dropped it, in the gangway after that, or up the stairs onto the plane or whatever. I think it'd be extremely challenging, almost impossible actually, to get on a plane without your passport. Anyway, the story continues. They ask her what type of medication. Maybe they have it on board. But then she snaps back at them, telling them it doesn't matter what medication, and that she needs her purse, full stop, and she can't have this conversation right now. What the frick? Yeah, I mean, when are you going to have that conversation if you can't have it right now? Isn't this the perfect time to have it? Later, they informed her that the ground crew searched the gate where the girl told them the purse would be, but they found nothing. Then it got worse when her brother jumped, screaming at the crew, saying he can go and look for it. We were literally in take-off position, away from the gate. The crew informed him that they can't allow him to do that. Then he charged out of his seat, demanding to speak to the pilot, saying, I'm a pilot, and I know what can be done. The audacity. So after 45 minutes, the guy comes back, grabs his carry-ons and his sister, and left the plane after making a pathetic little speech saying his sister could not have survived the flight without the medication. At this point, everyone else on the flight was just like, get the frick off, dude. No one wants to hear this trash. Later on, the captain informed the passengers that they were kicked off the plane because the purse was found, but there was no medication in it. And then the crew had to manually confirm the belongings of everyone on the plane to make sure these two did not leave anything suspicious behind, causing everyone to freak out over a potential security threat, considering the BS story the two morons told. Oh my gosh, that is such a good point that I didn't even think of. Yeah, it makes complete sense. That would take ages. So the whole ordeal caused the flight to be delayed by an hour or so. But it was infuriating to see how rude they were to the lovely crew and how entitled they thought they were to everyone's time. It was a packed flight with families and kids on board. She probably just didn't want to lose her purse, knowing that if she made up a whole sob story, they'd just go and get her bag and hand it to her, no questions asked. Keep them off flights, please. Yeah, I agree. It's definitely people like this that should be banned from flying. It's just so entitled, so selfish. You just have no right to ruin everyone else's day and flight just because you were stupid enough to leave your purse behind in the airport. That's on you. It just is. Also, who knows? I mean, if you do the right things and yeah, fair enough. Say to the staff, oh, I made a mistake. I left my purse at the gate. Can you just ring and have someone collect it and then I can get it another time, or it can be sent to you, whatever. That's fine. But don't ruin everyone's day and cause the plane to be delayed and, all this other stuff just because you're an idiot and left a belonging of yours behind. I mean, yeah, the top comment here literally is, the irony is, if the purse was going to be found, as it was, the airline probably could have arranged to have it sent to them on the next flight. They didn't need all that drama. Exactly. It doesn't even matter like that much. You'll get it back. Why lie about first your passport being in it, then life-saving medication that clearly was absolute BS? It's just all a load of rubbish. And yeah, I genuinely do think they should be banned, at least from the airline. Ideally, from going anywhere on a plane ever again. I'm not sure logistically if that's possible, but you know, it should be. Karen tries to stop a homeless man's cookout. Now I'm frustrated. I am homeless and don't have many options food-wise. Like the rest of the world, I have the same options: eat out or cook for myself. Restaurants are way out of my price range. The cheapest thing on the menu at a fast food place is enough to feed myself for an entire day from a cheap grocery store. My options to prepare my food are limited. I don't cook back at my camp. It's too dangerous and attracts too much attention. So I use the fire pits located in many of my city's parks. FYI, they are legitimate fire pits meant for picnics and for the public to use. Today it was going to rain very early, so I went to the pit I use regularly to cook my breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever it is. I only eat once a day, early. I got to the pit around 3:30. I wrapped my foil pouch, made of potatoes, carrots, and lunch meat foil bake. I had the fire going and my food in when this male Karen aggressively walked towards me and the pit with a cell phone to his ear. He came up screaming, "What the frick are you doing? What are you doing? That's a freaking fire. What are you doing?" I said, "I'm cooking dinner." The guy yelled at me to put the fire out, saying it's against the law. Now, this isn't the first time I have dealt with a very similar situation. I told him to eat a D and beat it, and to his credit, he left. Until the fire department showed up. They came to put out my fire. I talked with them and they said the police were on the way as well and that I could be fined $500 for having a fire in a non-designated place. I said, "Isn't this one of the places? Look at the fire pit." Well, they decided to wait until the police came. The cops asked me what's cooking. They said, "Yeah, this is the spot to have a fire," and pointed at the sign saying Picnic Area 3. And I'll give credit where credit is due, they were dang good cops. They left without even asking my name. P.S. My meal came out fantastic. Okay, so there we go for the first story. And look, even if this guy genuinely did think that, you know, you're not allowed to do barbecues or use public fires or whatever, clearly, first of all, he was absolutely wrong in that. But even if he did think that you weren't allowed to do it, just why get involved? It's a homeless guy. Like, do you need to get involved there at all? Could you not just carry on with your day and leave him to it? Even if it is illegal, why do you have to be the one to say, no, you're not allowed to cook your food there, when you can see that the guy is homeless and struggling obviously anyway? I just don't think it's worth getting involved. But yeah, this guy clearly is a Karen anyway, or a Darren. What do we end up calling? A Kevin, wasn't it? No, not a Kevin. What do we end up calling male Karens? Were they Darrens? I don't know. Drop in the comments down below. But yeah, whatever. This guy is just clearly getting his nose in where it doesn't belong for no real reason. Even if it was illegal, I just don't think it was worth it. And the fact that it's completely legal and you're allowed to do it, and if anything encouraged, like they're there for public use, makes him look like even more of an idiot than he already was. Also, shout out the police, because a lot of the time police get kind of a bad rep, I think, for dealing with homeless people in a worse way. But this time, you know, you got treated completely fairly and correctly. So that is good to see as well. Although I do kind of feel like the fire department should also have known that this was a designated spot to have a fire, given they are the fire department. But hey, we can't have everything, can we? Now moving on to our second story. This is actually the last story of this episode. It's a long one, so get locked in. It's very, very juicy. My sister got mad at me for regularly eating in a hospital cafeteria and got our parents on her side. The rest of the family laid into them for it. So my sister decided to prank me as revenge by literally having my bike stolen and dumped. I nearly called the cops. I really apologize for the length of this post. First of all, do not apologize. The longer the better in my opinion. But writing down all the details took way longer than I thought. And this situation was downright crazy. I never thought my sister would do something like this. Not too long ago, I, a 23-year-old man, posted in r/AmIThejerk for advice, because my parents and sister were angry at me for regularly eating in a hospital cafeteria because it's close to my work. Now, I enjoy the peace and quiet there on the days that I do show up to eat, but this situation escalated so radically that I can't believe something so dumb actually happened. My sister did the pettiest thing she's ever done to me. and for completely undeserved reasons too. When my sister found out I was eating at the hospital cafeteria, she went off on me over how that food is just for people who are at the hospital because they need to be. We ended up in a big argument about it, in which I told her it wasn't like I was taking food from the mouths of patients. Then she went to our parents to get them on her side like always, and they immediately sided with her just like I thought they would. They backed her up on how the hospital cafeteria was not a place to go eating casually, and we had a big argument. They spent days hounding me and telling me I was wrong and demanding I stop, so I went to Reddit. And here I learned that not only was I not doing anything wrong, but it's a very common thing for people to go eat at hospital cafeterias just because they like it. Now I have to interject it and say that what your sister is saying here, OP, is possibly one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. You're not taking the food that is given to patients. You're going into the cafeteria where you have to pay for food. It's a place for visitors of patients. It's a place for anyone, it's a public place. The one thing it isn't for is for patients of the hospital because they are getting food in their rooms, in their beds, aren't they? I mean, unless I'm just misunderstanding the situation here, at least in England, where I live, the cafeteria that is, there when you go into a hospital is completely public and it is for anyone and you have to pay for the food. It's very separate to the food that patients get. Anyway, OP continues. I hope the situation would just fade away. But a few days later, my sister called me asking me if I'd stopped eating at the hospital. I said no, and then it all started again. My parents then called me fuming, acting like I was supposed to stop going because they said so. I reminded them that I don't live under their roof anymore. And this is exactly the kind of reason why I moved out. They take my sister's side in almost everything. They huffed and puffed about it. This time the fight didn't stay at home though. Other relatives found out because my sister tried to broaden her supports. She was so dead set on enforcing her will upon me that she went looking for help from other relatives. But our parents were the only ones on her side, and my uncle personally admonished my parents and her over the phone for it once I told him what actually happened. He told them they were only siding with my sister because she's their favourite, and that they're terrible parents for ever playing favourites in the first place. Then my cousin went to eat with me at that hospital cafeteria and said that he'd like to go there once a week too, as he also works nearby and cycles everywhere. We've run into each other at lunch there once already since then. He was actually rather pleased to find out the food was made healthier than most other places. He's a bit of a picky eater. So this place is kind of like his new lunch hangout. And my sister, of course, got even angrier after finding out there were other people in the family eating at the hospital now too. I really hope that this ends up with your entire family, apart from your parents and your sister OP, eating at the hospital as much as possible. Once outed, my parents backed down due to embarrassment. They apologized to me and gave me some malarkey that they honestly thought eating at a hospital was weird and that they felt like they just needed to defend my sister. I told them they'd been placating my sister for so long that it's all they do whenever she starts something with anyone. She's been treating me like a condescending control freak and a bully since we were teenagers, even though I'm older, and they just kept enabling that. But I won't put up with it anymore. My parents ended up conceding and apologized. Then they made my sister apologize to me too, and I could tell she hated every second of it because she tried to speak through her teeth at first. Later on, my parents invited me to dinner as another form of apology, but it felt more like a show to look good to the rest of the family because they told everyone about it before it even happened. The dinner was great, I can't deny. My parents had cooked a turkey, arguably one of my favorite things to eat. I love the drumsticks slathered with gravy. Yeah, I'm kind of a pig when I eat them, but I can't help it. My sister always thought it was hilarious and was one of the few things I didn't mind her laughing about. So I thought nothing of why she was so giggly at dinner. Later, after dinner, I noticed that my bike was missing. I parked it in the backyard out of sight, but it was just gone. I freaked out because it's my only mode of transportation. My parents did panic a bit with me, but my sister seemed just the opposite. She actually looked happy and was still giggling. I immediately suspected her, but she played innocent. She even gave the "I can't believe you think I'd do something like that" line. I already know that she's extremely petty, but this was a whole new level of it for her. So I said that I was going to go over to the neighbour because I know they have cameras and they'd have seen what happened. And then I'd call the cops. My sister, of course, suddenly looked panicked, and I got mad and said I knew it was her, and I demanded my bike back. She started crying, saying she didn't do anything, and then our parents, of course, immediately took her aside, scolding me for daring to accuse her. So I had enough and said I was going to the neighbours to ask to check their cameras, and then I'd be calling the police. My sister finally fessed up and called me to come back. The looks on our parents' faces after they just defended her were priceless. My sister said she was just so angry at me for having made her apologise for something she still believed she was right about. So she planned to have a couple of her friends come and grab my bike during dinner. She said her friends were in a minivan with it just down the street. She then started saying that I couldn't call police on her anyway because I'm her big brother. Our parents backed that up too. But I pulled out my phone and started marching outside again. They ran after me, with my sister begging and crying for me to stop. I called her a brat, and then I told my parents I couldn't believe they were still defending her when she was acting this way. Our parents finally hit their enabling limit with her and told her to make her friends bring my bike back immediately. She got on her phone while sniffling and called her friends up. But then she suddenly ran into her room to talk to them. I couldn't hear a thing she said through the door because it was all whispers, and our parents looked very worried too. My sister would never have willingly admitted that she had my bike stolen. She just kept sobbing that it was only a prank over and over again, and she also kept using the excuse that it's just a cheap bike anyway. I bought it used some months ago for $50, but it's in great shape, and it's my main mode of transportation, and, this is me saying this now guys, it doesn't matter how expensive it is, she still stole it from you. My sister kept looking at our parents to back her up, and that time, they just couldn't. So she just slumped down in a chair, hugging her knees and waiting with the rest of us. She looked increasingly freaked out the longer her friends took to bring my bike back and was repeatedly texting them. Even though my sister said her friends were just down the street, it took them roughly an hour to bring my bike back. They finally pulled up in the minivan with my bike shoved in the back, and it was completely soaked and all muddy, like it had just been pulled out of a wet, muddy ditch. The bike is a 700C, so it's too tall for either of them to ride. So they just drove right up and stole the bike by dragging it into the van as fast as they could before taking off. I say they stole it because I was almost certain in the moment that my sister had told them to dispose of my bike. Had I not pointed out the neighbours have cameras, I may not have gotten it back. When her friends did finally arrive, their legs were all muddy and wet, nearly up to their knees. They both begged me not to report them to the police for taking the bike. I asked while recording them to tell me the truth, and I pointed out the neighbours have cameras. Did my sister want them to get rid of my bike? They broke down and said yes. My sister wanted them to take the bike, dump it in a pond a few miles away, and then they had to go back and get it when they realised they were caught. My bike had been near completely submerged in muddy water. Thankfully, I didn't have many added accessories on it other than a detachable headlight and my water bottle, but the water bottle was missing. I wasn't surprised by what my sister's friends told me, and I had them tell our parents too. They laid into my sister till she was bawling on the floor, kicking and pounding like a toddler. I'd never seen her act that way since she actually was one, and I found it mortifying that she was still like this on the inside. Then she shut herself in her room. Her friends were banned from ever coming to my parents' house again. Then my sister was forced to come out of her room by our mother and make another big apology to me. Our father then forced her to wash and oil my bike from stem to stern under his supervision while I took apart the headlight and cleaned it out to dry it. By the time my sister was done, it was dark outside. She glared at me like I was the devil when she came back in the house, but our parents shut her attitude right down and said they'd never been more embarrassed by her in their lives. She went back to crying in her room. I had a very frank discussion with my parents about my sister's childlike behaviour and how it stemmed from their spoiling and enabling. I said I couldn't believe that I had to be the voice of reason, but the fact that she was on the floor, crying like a toddler, kicking and pounding, showed that she's still mentally a child because of them. And they kept making me the scapegoat when she screwed up, so she barely knows any sense of accountability. For once, they didn't argue with me about it. And then my father silently drove me and my bike back to my apartment with his SUV. He also gave me some money to replace my bike's missing water bottle before we parted. My sister and her clique used to harass me a fair bit whenever we ran into each other. They made fun of me as a group whenever possible, and I usually just ignored them because they bored me, and that really seemed to tick them off. But After the bike incident, I got sent numerous messages from numbers I didn't know, cussing me out for making my sister cry over a silly prank. Knowing her, she probably fed everyone she knew a very different story of what happened. I texted lengthy replies of what actually happened and even stated that I have recordings of her friends admitting the truth. Some people at my sister's college found out what actually went down. Maybe from my texts, maybe her friends spilled the beans, but it's embarrassed my sister so much that she came home having a crying tantrum about how people there were calling her and her friends bees and bike thieves. I may not have gone to college, but I know students who need them are very protective of their bikes. A lot of them live on shoestring budgets after all. My sister says someone even joked they shouldn't leave a bike around her because it might just disappear if she had to apologize to anyone. My sister ended up so upset that she refused to leave her room for 3 days to have her pity party. My parents called me up to try and turn everything on me again. What? I cannot believe that. Really? After seemingly conceding the fact that they have enabled your sister's terrible behavior, they then revert back to type. I mean, probably I should have expected it, but goodness me. Anyway, OP continues. I reminded them about the discussion we had days before and that they needed to stop babying her and let her deal with the repercussions of her own actions. If she fails her classes again, it's because she's not trying like she should be. Then I went off on them how they were just looking for someone to blame to make her feel better. She made the problem, not me, and I wasn't going to be the one they make the scapegoat anymore. My sister's an adult and she needs to act like it. They sounded defeated and then apologized before ending the call. It looks like they were genuinely hoping I'd just sit back and take the blame so my sister would get better, but I never will again. Now my parents are trying to pretend this all never happened, and my sister as well as her clique are avoiding me at all costs, which I suppose is fine with me because I don't want any more drama, but the next time something like this happens, I won't take it from them. Well, moral of this story is that your sister and parents are just awful people, and thankfully the rest of your family aren't like them. But I genuinely was thinking that perhaps your parents had turned a corner after you're 23, didn't say your sister's age, but after a couple of decades probably of enabling your sister's terribly entitled behavior and just allowing her to just walk all over you. I thought maybe we got to the end, maybe finally there had been some justice and they'd realized, oh my goodness, we've just been terrible parents to her our entire lives or her entire life. But no. Then they came back and said, actually, no, we thought about it and yeah, you were wrong the whole time. Despite us listening to everything you said that was obviously completely factual and correct. Nah, you're wrong. Sorry. We've actually decided that you've treated your sister badly and we've treated her well. And this is all your fault once again. I will say honestly, OP, that just based on your last sentence, when you said the next time something like this happens, I won't take it from them. Are we not at this level yet? Like, wasn't this probably the last straw? I mean, it has to have been the last straw. She's got her friends to steal your bike and throw it in a pond for no reason. Surely at that point, you just have to say, no, I'm done with this. And I'm not speaking to you again or my parents because you're enabling the behavior. And also, her friends, by the way, are as idiotic as her. They're literally breaking the law. She, to be fair, is not actually the one doing the crime. I know she set it up and obviously that's still illegal, but they, for whatever reason, I don't know, she must have some sort of hold on them, but they're willing to steal her brother's bike and throw it in a pond. You go to prison for that. They're as idiotic as her. I mean, our whole friend group just seem like idiots. Yeah, terrible people, your sister and her enabling parents, your enabling parents. Get them gone, is all I can say. Man angrily insists I put a leash on a dog that's not my dog. I was doing my usual evening walk about the campus of Caltech a couple nights ago, with my earbuds in listening to an Audible book. A man stopped right in front of me and yelled, "Take your earbuds out." I took one out. He said, in an aggressive, angry tone, "You can't have your dog off leash here. Put a leash on your dog." I said, very calmly, "I don't have a dog." The man gave this guffaw of disbelief and gestured at something behind me. He said, "Do you have a leash with you? I don't see a leash. You can't walk a dog here off leash." By this time, I had a good idea what was going on. I walk at Caltech all the time, and I see certain animals pretty often. I turned to look, and yes, it was just what I thought. I said, "That's not a dog, that's a coyote. It's a wild animal." For a long second, the man stared at me. Then he stared at the coyote. Then he made a kind of, noise. He turned around and started half walking, half running away from both me and the coyote. I almost called after him, "Never run from a wild predator," but I didn't. Damn, there we go. What a story to kick things off with. And you know what's even better? For those of you watching on YouTube right now, OP's actually posted a photo that they then took of the coyote. They edit to add that this photo was taken at about 9 p.m. It was dark, but because of obviously taking the photo on an iPhone plus some area lighting, it makes it look a lot lighter than it actually was. But yeah, you can see there, clearly not a dog, clearly a coyote. And I'm just not sure if it gets any more embarrassing than that. I mean, it's just crazy. Just so good. What a start to the episode. The fact that he was probably scared of the coyote after learning what it was, and then was half walking but really running away afterwards as well, is just so good. Just such a good start. Let's carry on. Woman at hospital refuses to check in. This just happened. I'm still sitting at the lobby in awe of the event, and I wanted to write it down while it's still fresh in my mind. I'm waiting for a ride home, so I got to witness the majority. For blood work at this particular medical centre, there's a digital kiosk to sign in rather than speaking to a desk. The kiosk is very simple. Put your ID and insurance card in the machine, it'll scan, check you have a blood work request, then confirm it to the room in the back. While I was waiting, an older woman comes up to the front and entirely passes the kiosk and attempts to open the door into the lab. The door, not locked, is opened, and nurses quickly rush up to stop her, leading to an argument in the lobby with around 3 nurses blocking the door. One nurse said, "Mom, you need to check in and wait to be called." The woman replied, "Oh, I'm not doing that. You can't pay me to touch a dang computer. I don't even have an ID. You can look up my information in the back." The second nurse said, "It doesn't work like that here. The kiosk is very simple. You can manually put in your information if you don't have an ID." "I'm not doing that. This is unnecessary. The office in another town over doesn't have one. It's hard enough to put a card in the grocery store machine. Now you're making me do it here?" "We're not that other location though. I'm sorry, but we need you to check in. I can help if you need." "Oh, this is ridiculous. Just look up my information. I'm an old woman. I won't touch a computer. I don't touch a computer anywhere. You can't force me." "Mom, we're not forcing you. It's just how our system works. I can do it for you if you have your information." "Fine, do it then." From there, she proceeds to announce her personal information very loudly, and the nurse inputs it. "Do you have an insurance card?" "Obviously, but I don't have it on me. You can look it up." "Unfortunately, I can't. Our system doesn't work that way." "Do you know your insurance ID?" "Yeah." And then she gives the number. There you go. You're checked in. No problems. Finally. I don't understand why this new generation is making everything so difficult. You can't expect me to use a computer. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone I know or any of these people behind me. For a 1 to 10, I'd give it a 0. "I understand, Mom. You're signed in though. You can take a seat now." "What? I can't go back? I just went through all that trouble to sign in. I'm an old woman. This is already stressful." "There's someone in the back already. You'll be called in soon." "I'll make sure to never come to this location again. Hurry it up." So then the nurses went into the back, and this woman took a seat somewhat close to me and began talking to the other people in the lobby. Only one other person engaged her, and she started talking about pancakes, like she didn't cause a spectacle just now. Is this what secondhand embarrassment is? When she was called, she left her pile of belongings on the chair and went to the back. Okay, aside from the fact that this woman is obviously very, very entitled, I want to ask you guys this question. Do you think that, in the modern day in which we all live, a woman or a man or anyone of a certain age has the right to now say that they don't want anything to do with modern technology and that everyone else should then work around them? Now, I understand when this sort of tech came in, phones, the internet, etc. It was a new thing for everyone, and a lot of people didn't want to learn. A lot of people did learn, whatever. But now I feel like just, the amount of tech that's in the world, that is just the way it is right now. Like, in my GP, you also sign in on the kiosk. You don't go and speak to somebody. That is just a very common thing now. Loads of different places now you have to download an app to order something, for example, or to get in somewhere. I just went to the Euros that are happening right now in the football world in Germany. You had to have an app on your phone to get in. If you didn't have an app, it was impossible. Like, the barcode was constantly changing on your phone. That is how, they make sure that people don't get in that don't have a ticket or have scammed their way in or whatever. What I'm saying is it's kind of the modern way. You have to be up to date, at least a little bit, with some form of technology. So I personally think that it's about time this woman changed her ways, and other people like her, unfortunately, I know people don't want to, but you kind of have to get on board at least the minimum amount with tech. Like, I think that you should have a phone if you can afford one. You should know how to download an app, etc. You should know how to log in, at the hospital on a little easy kiosk board like that. What do you guys think, though? Do you think that there should be like an age cutoff, or do you think it's just time that everyone started just understanding that tech really isn't that hard, even if you're old? And I would actually go as far to say as it's her own ignorance, and for some reason the fact that she's proud of not using tech or computers, that is just working against her when she just needs to adapt and open her mind to the world of tech. Now for our third story. I know it says these deposits are non-refundable. I've been tattooing professionally for close to 2 years, and this is my first time dealing with this particular situation. While I fully understand why individuals are reluctant to have a newer artist working on them, I've also seen experienced artists mess up and or screw people over. I had a young man and his father come into the shop recently. This was my second time speaking with them. The adult-aged son wanted a relatively easy piece on his forearm. It consisted of only lettering, a little line work, and some generic cloud shading. They did not ask for a specific artist, and they put a deposit down with me for an appointment initially set for today. The young man's mother contacted me yesterday, explained that they had an event coming up, and she did not want tattoo plastic wrap present in the event photos and wished to reschedule. Weird excuse, but not a problem. I attempted to reschedule him twice before speaking with the mother again today. The mother began with, "It says right on the appointment card that these deposits are non-refundable, but I just thought I'd ask." She then went on to state that individuals online said go in and ask for the owner. So her husband and son were supposed to ask for the owner instead of whoever just threw you up there. Now the owner was not even there either time they came in, and the owner wasn't mentioned. She kept stating that she was aware I was new and wanted someone more experienced, like the owner, doing her adult-aged son's first piece since it was bigger. Again though, it was a simple piece. At one point she even asked, "Are you still an apprentice or what?" When I informed her that I'd been taking on my own clients for well over a year now, she only said, "Yeah, see, I'd like someone with more experience to do it." I offered to transfer the deposit over to a more experienced artist, the exact one she was asking for, and she stated that she'd just like the deposit back. She stated a second time that she was aware that the deposit was non-refundable, but that she just thought I'd ask. I told her at this point that the owner retains half of the deposit, so I'd have to discuss the potential return with him, and she asked in a rather rude tone, "Okay, well, should I expect to hear back from you tonight then, or should I be contacting him myself?" Okay, no doubt about it. With this one, I would definitely tell her that a refund is not available. I think, you've been messed around a lot here. So I think you should be able to keep the money as payment for the time and effort that you've put into all of this, because goodness me, it sounds like just horrible to deal with this woman. Also, I know it's her son, but as you kept saying throughout this post, he is an adult. Surely, therefore, he should be the one cancelling his appointment, not his mum. That is really weird. I mean, I don't know who made the appointment in the first place. That obviously makes a difference as to what I'm saying now, but if he made the appointment in the first place, which I presume he did, because booking in for a tattoo on someone else's behalf is very weird anyway, surely he should be the one to cancel it. So in that case, I would just say, look, sorry, I need to speak to the client, and then make a decision after that. Don't deal with this horrible mother. I want a biscuit. The 2-day saga of a hospital Karen. This is going to be long, but full of entitlement. I was in hospital and ended up being put in the observation unit because no specialist beds were available. The OBS unit is a catch-all ward where patients are put if they're not in imminent danger but need regular monitoring. It's bright and extremely noisy, so nobody can sleep well. Unfortunately, Biscuit Karen arrives at 10 PM on day one. What a nickname, by the way. Why is she called Biscuit Karen? Because she wants a biscuit and she's shouting this loudly enough for the whole OBS unit to hear. Never mind the time or that we're mostly trying to sleep. Never mind that her blood sugar is 8.5, elevated, and she's diabetic, so she really doesn't need more sugar. But hey ho, the long-suffering nurses find her a biscuit and ask her to be quiet. Biscuit Karen, though, does not quieten down because shouting is her default setting, and she doesn't seem to notice that other patients exist. After 10 minutes of solid noise pollution, she wants another biscuit. The nurses give it to her. More noise. Then, another 15 minutes later, she shouts, calling for another biscuit. The nurses are occupied, so nobody answers her immediately. So she shouts her request louder, as if we all hadn't heard her already. This is where the nurses begin to lose patience. She is told to be quiet, and her blood sugar level is mentioned. However, Biscuit Karen insists, so she's given another freaking biscuit. Maybe the nurses drugged this one, because Biscuit Karen soon goes to sleep and snores loudly. This was a taste of what was to come, but nobody on the OBS unit knew it yet. Day 2, 11 PM. Biscuit Karen has been okay all day, and nothing much appears to be wrong with her. She has a walking aid and can get herself to the toilet, but she doesn't want to. She shouts to call a nurse to put her on the commode. A very blunt nurse points out that she's seen Karen walking, so she's not going to help her. The toilet is only 10 meters away. Biscuit Karen does not accept this. She keeps shouting for a nurse to help her. Eventually, the blunt nurse goes to check, and Biscuit Karen has actually wet herself in her passive-aggressive rage. The nurse is shocked and is telling Biscuit Karen off. Biscuit Karen doesn't care. Meanwhile, the bed is now sodden and the sheets have to be changed. The blunt nurse helps put Biscuit Karen on the commode and then goes to get the spare sheets. Unfortunately for the nurses, other patients are being equally as tricky. There's the alcoholic man who can't walk but keeps trying and falling to the floor, the polar opposite of our anti-heroine. And a woman with a broken neck who constantly takes off her nightgown and tries to go wandering. All the nurses are kept busy rounding up the strays and inevitably forget about the abandoned Biscuit Karen left sitting on the commode. Can I just say, this wing sounds like an absolute nightmare. Oh my goodness me. Biscuit Karen ensures that she's not neglected for long. Can somebody help me? Ricochets repeatedly around the OBS unit to the dismay of all the people trying to sleep. Eventually it becomes, somebody help me, my back hurts. Of all the disruptive behavior happening on the OBS unit, she's by far the loudest, the most persistent, and the most obnoxious, because she caused her own discomfort in the first place. I'm peeved, and so is everyone else. The blunt nurse gets back to her and an argument starts. She's cross as she's needlessly making the bed. Biscuit Karen is angry that she's been left in an uncomfortable sitting position. In fact, she's getting more aggressive by the second, and eventually she slaps the nurse. The blunt nurse does not put up with this nonsense. She abandons making the bed, leaves Biscuit Karen on timeout, still on the commode, and ignores all shouted demands to come back. She tells the other irate patients that she's not risking further aggression, and we all agree with her in solidarity. The blunt nurse was true to her word, so eventually a deeply compassionate nurse tried her luck making the bed. Unfortunately for DC nurse, Biscuit Karen is a raging racist, true to stereotype, and she not only calls her the N-word, but also tells her to go back to where she came from. Oh my goodness. DC nurse nopes out at that point, whilst blunt nurse calls security. Biscuit Karen has begun yelling every few seconds, I want my phone! Where is my phone? Still from the commode, presumably so she can enact her threats. I'm going to report you! I'm going to get you fired! The nurses aren't stupid though, so nobody gives Biscuit Karen her phone. It doesn't occur to Biscuit Karen to get off the commode and find her own phone. Meanwhile, the other patients have hit their BS saturation point and have started yelling at Biscuit Karen to shut up. It's past 12 AM and nobody can go to sleep yet. At this point, the cries from Biscuit Karen change to, somebody help me, every 3 seconds, over and over again. The nurses are unmoved. There's a torrent of reactive verbal abuse from the other patients, but Biscuit Karen doesn't seem to hear them. In fact, she's completely devolved into a pathetic toddler tantrum, except toddlers have more self-respect, and she stays immersed in her self-pity for a long time. Meanwhile, 1 AM rolls around. Security officers take their time to arrive, but when they do, they're met with what happens to be a distressed old lady who claims that the nurses are hurting her and that DC nurse actually hit her, an audacious lie. However, Biscuit Karen is too dysregulated to keep the facade up for long and morphs back into a spiteful and aggressive harpy when blunt nurse goes back to fix the bed. The security officers see exactly why they were called and try to keep the peace whilst the bed is finally finished. There's not much 2 thick-set men can do with a small old woman perched on a commode, but they tried. Eventually, Biscuit Karen starts demanding her medication, and somebody comes up with the bright idea of calling an accident and emergency doctor. Who can quell the entitled savagery of the enraged Karen? Of course, it would be a young, handsome, confident male doctor. The very epitome of a rescuer to an old female dog who's trying to play the victim. When he turns up, Biscuit Karen becomes a sweet and compliant old lady, answering, "Yes, doctor. No, doctor." She does try to repeat her lie about being assaulted, but several patient statements, 2 jaded nurses, and 2 exiting security personnel provided otherwise. The doctor gave Biscuit Karen her meds, she was helped to bed, and she fell asleep. Meanwhile, the rest of the patients on the obs unit were too high on adrenaline to feel drowsy, so were condemned to further wakefulness. I was glad to leave the next day. Wow, what a way to end this episode. I genuinely think that this woman probably ticks every box in terms of any sort of characteristic or trait that you would hate for someone to have. And to be honest, a lot of the time entitled people do tick the majority, but I reckon she's pushing 95, 100%. Just an awful, awful human. My goodness me. I mean, even the fact that she then turns on the charm, or at least tries to, and becomes like all sweet and, "Oh, yes, yes, doctor, no, doctor," at the end, rather than just being horrible the whole way through, if anything, makes her worse to me, because she's just trying to manipulate even more. If she was just downright horrible, at least she'd be just downright horrible. The fact that she's probably able to get some people on her side when she is as disgusting as this genuinely makes her even worse as a human. Oh, my goodness me. I mean, 1 minute alone in a room with her, in a ward with her, would be bad. 1 night, geez, I bet the nurses are just thinking, oh, why on earth are people like this? I want to go home. Our neighbours have been having pool parties at our pool while we are not home for years. A few years ago, my husband and I purchased a house with a pool. Now, we are acquainted with most of our neighbours, but definitely not close friends with any of them. They all seem nice, but, well, we just don't have much in common other than where we live. Next door to the right is a family of 6. Twin daughters attending the local university, high school age son, and a young elementary school age daughter, maybe 1st or 2nd grade, and then the parents. Now, normally we open the pool in early May and we keep it open until the end of October. But this year our weather was off and we had a very cool and very wet month of May, and then June went straight to 100+ temperatures. Now, I'm currently on medication that makes it difficult for me to tolerate being in the sun and heat for an extended time. Plus, we have been helping 2 extended family members who are having health issues. So, because of this, we haven't had our pool opened yet this year. Normally, we go to the family lake house for a week during each of the 3 major holidays. But we didn't go for Memorial Day because there was flooding around the lake this year. And because a family member was just discharged from the hospital yesterday, and July 4th being a Thursday this year, we decided to stay home this week and be available to help this family member. Now, several times in June, the little girl next door has seen either my husband or myself outside, and she's asked when we are opening the pool. We first told her maybe later, but the last time, yesterday, that she asked, and I said we're probably just not going to open it this year, she started crying. Now, we've never had any of our neighbours over to use our pool, so I didn't understand why she was crying over us not opening our pool. Well, I spoke with the neighbour on the left later, and apparently our neighbours on the right have been having a small family party at our pool every 4th of July when we're gone. They've always cleaned up really well afterwards, and because we have scheduled pool maintenance and weekly yard service, occasionally things are moved around in our yard and we never thought much about it. The neighbour on the left thought we'd given the other neighbours permission to use our pool. We did give them permission to retrieve any balls or toys that ended up in our yard, but never permission to use our pool, especially when we're not at home. We have a special latch on the gate, and my husband did show the neighbour how to open the gate to retrieve his kids' toys. So, now my husband, who loves gadgets, is going to have several more cameras installed around the exterior of our house, covering the gate and pool area, and have the gate latch made where we can grant remote access for the pool service and yardmen. Luckily, we have a friend who does cameras and home automation systems. I'm annoyed our neighbours have been using our pool without permission, but my husband is happy I am letting him get more gadgets around the house. Now, do we confront the neighbours and let them know we know they've been using our pool? Or do we just wait and see if they say anything about our new security cameras. Okay, so that is it for the original post, but as I mentioned in the introduction to this one, there is an update that was posted just 2 days later. Let's get straight into it. I didn't expect this to blow up like it has. I certainly didn't expect over 1,000 comments. Actually, yeah, looking at the original post, it has over 18,000 upvotes and yeah, over 1,000 comments. I've tried to read them all, and some were very creative and amusing to read. First of all, we don't want to hurt anyone or alienate our neighbours. We just don't want people using our pool without permission, and we don't want the liability associated with this activity. Here's an example of a comment that I think that OP was referencing. Somebody said on the original post, "I'm so petty that I'd open the pool, hide the cars so they'd think I was gone, then lurk hidden near the pool ready to step in and ask what the heck they think they're doing when they stroll in for their party. I'd embarrass them in front of their guests so hard." Then again, you have to live next door to these people, so probably best not to do that. But that would be so good in that moment, oh my goodness. Anyway, let's get back to the update. A few things I feel I need to clarify. Yes, our backyard is fully fenced in with 2 gates. The one in the back is double locked from the inside. The side gate on the side of the garage nearest the neighbours in question has a double latch that you have to reach over the top and find not 1, but 2 releases to open the gate. There's also an auto close that automatically closes the gate and latches it. I personally can't open the gate from the outside of the fence because I can't reach over that far to reach the 2 latches. The previous owner put this in and it's worked well for our yard crew and the pool maintenance people. We do have some cameras, a doorbell camera and a camera over our garage area. The garage camera picks up if someone goes towards the gate from the front, but we didn't want to invade our neighbour's privacy by recording their side garage door and gate to their backyard. We even shared the camera angle with them because we didn't want them to be concerned about us recording their children or their coming and going. I guess we were more concerned about their privacy than they were about ours. Anyway, the update. Thursday, July 4th morning. I was loading a few things in my vehicle to take my cousin who just got out of the hospital. Neighbour/husband, who's been gone a lot for work recently, saw me and came over and asked if I was getting a late start going to the lake. I let him know that we were staying home because we're helping my cousin who just got out of hospital. He asked if we were going to be staying at home all weekend. I said yes, one or both of us will be around all weekend. He quickly wished me a happy 4th and went home. I went back in to grab my purse and tell my husband about the conversation with the neighbour before I left. When I got home, our friend Mike was there. Mike does security cameras and home automation systems, gadgets, and my husband loves gadgets. Mike and my husband have a plan for multiple cameras and several gadgets, some of which involve us going ahead and having the pool opened. I agreed to all but 1 of the new cameras and almost all of the gadgets. I think my husband put some in the plan knowing he'd have to give up on a few of them. Mike also suggested talking to our homeowner's insurance agent because we might be able to get some discounts with the security upgrades. So on Friday the 5th, Tom, our insurance guy, comes over and Mike is back. And he has a drone to help him find the best camera positions. Really, I think he just wanted to show off his gadget. So my husband, Mike and Tom are outside and all around the house and occasionally inside. I look outside every so often and at different times other neighbours have come outside and down to our end of the street. The neighbours want to know what's going on. So my husband tells them we're concerned that someone or several people may have used our pool without our permission while we were not home. It turns out that 2 different neighbours had witnessed some friends of the neighbours' children come over last year, and they and the neighbour twins had gone into our backyard. One neighbour even asked the girls, and they claimed that we let them come over all the time and use our pool. So at this point, my husband and Tom discussed this, and Tom says we should send a registered letter to the neighbours rescinding our permission from entering our fenced-in backyard. So before Mike and Tom left, the neighbours on the right, pool party neighbours, come home. Both husband and wife. My husband asked to talk to them, and with Mike and Tom as witnesses, he tells them that for insurance reasons, we are rescinding our permission for them or any member of their family or guests to enter our fenced-in backyard, and we will be sending a registered letter stating this as requested by our insurance. My husband never accused them or their children of using our pool, but said we had reason to believe that in the past, our pool had been used without our permission. He did say that we had reason to believe that their older children might be friends with someone who's been in our pool. My husband also told them that we are changing the gate to have an automated lock and cameras will be installed around the pool area. He also assured them that we'd avoid the cameras being pointed at their windows or backyard. My husband indicated that we were taking these measures to hopefully lower our homeowners' insurance rates. He said that they exchanged a few looks between them, but they said they understood and appreciated the heads up. So, hopefully this saga is over, but if there are any other updates, I will try and post them. Okay, so there we go. That is the end of the story for now, and I'm going to be honest, a little bit disappointed that we didn't get a really amazing ending to this one. Something along the lines of a comment I read below the original post, but maybe that was a little bit too far-fetched and fanciful. But I was dreaming of something as poetic as that. Imagine the look on their faces when you just come out of nowhere. Surprise, we're not at the lake, and you are on our property. Here are the police. Would have been amazing. But in a much more real sense, I understand exactly why you did what you did, and it's a much more succinct and sensible solution to this problem that is going to have the best long-term effects. I think though, just finally, I do need to just talk about the absolute entitlement to go and use your neighbour's pool and have a party there without them knowing. Imagine doing that. It's genuinely insane. And you can't for 1 second say or have the excuse that because when my kid knocks the ball into their garden, we're allowed to go and get it, I'm then allowed to use the pool whenever I want. That's not how it works. It's absolutely insane. It is illegal, it is trespassing, and I'm glad that they've finally been stopped because it's just unbelievable what they were doing. Okay, now for our next story. Plane seat bandit finally happened to me. Now, I'm going to be honest, guys. I'm actually going to get on a flight in under 3 hours from the time of recording. So this is going to scare me, but I'm going to do it just for you. People stealing plane seats and getting told off for it are some of my favourite stories on Reddit. With the increase of plane seat bandits, most likely due to airlines almost making it a requirement to pay for seats if you want to sit next to your plane partner, I've been half expecting to run into one since me and my husband travel a lot for work. Well, it finally happened, and it was fun. Me and my husband always buy plane seats towards the back of the plane. As we stroll down, we see a lady with a young son, maybe 11 or 12, sitting in our seats. They were both deep in their phones when I told her that she was in our seats. We had to wake up at 3 a.m. to drive to the airport, and we didn't really sleep, so I was not in the mood for BS. She smiles and tells us that they weren't seated together, so the stewardess told her they could sit here. She most definitely didn't. I smile back and say we paid for these seats, so we'd like to sit there. She keeps smiling her stiff smile and points to other empty seats behind us and asks if we wouldn't mind sitting in one of them, since they're already settled and comfortable. Would it even matter? Well, I said, yes, since the plane is still boarding, so these might all be reserved, and it really messes with the system if people sit in random seats. Goodness me, the flight's not even full yet. Just get up and move, man. It's insane. Anyway, she is starting to lose her smile and says if there aren't seats available after the plane has finished boarding, they would move then. Now, I'm not confrontational, and I'm usually a people pleaser, so I'm struggling to stand up for myself, but I'm so proud for doing it anyways. Meanwhile, my husband is struggling between boarding passengers to get the flight attendant. I sigh and, with a half smile, say, I'm sorry, but I just want to sit down and not stand in the hallway blocking people to see if maybe there are empty seats when I paid for our seats. And besides, I would like the police to be able to identify our bodies by seat number in case the plane crashes and our families want to bury our remains. Oh my goodness. The kid's face, which has been glued to his phone this entire time, shoots up in shock and he looks between me and his mum. It was delicious. She has a bewildered look on her face. There's silence for 5 seconds before she packs up her stuff and pokes her son to move. I keep smiling sweetly and thank her and plonk myself down as my husband returns with a flight attendant. I tell her everything is fine and I tell my husband what happened. We laughed and I'm pretty sure the mum heard, or at least I hope so. I didn't look back, but I think I'm not mistaken of feeling a laser stare in the back of my head. Luckily, the flight was only 3 hours, so I didn't need to walk past for the loo. Well, that was a phenomenal story. Well, there we go. Some of my fears, I think, have been offset a little bit by reading that story. I have just got a notification literally right now from the flight saying it's going to be delayed. Don't know how. It's 3 a.m. when I'm recording this and the flight's at 6:50. How is it already delayed? Makes no sense. You can see maybe behind me. Oh, can you? Yes, there we go. A rucksack. Doesn't give anything away. I have a bag here as well. I'm going. And you know what? Because of this story, I want to bump into some entitled people, and I'm not going to be as funny or nice or clever as OP. I'm just going to batter them in the face. My sister climbs through the second story window and assaults me. I've watched her channel read out a lot of stories like this, but I never thought that I'd ever witness one or even be involved with one. But alas, my sister changed that. Who knows? Might be this channel. For some context, I am a 17-year-old man. My sister is a 20-year-old female. She is 21 weeks pregnant and smokes cigarettes, weed, and vapes while being so, and I refer to her as entitled sister. We verbally argue a lot, but it's never gotten physical. She insults my weight and calls me homophobic slurs. During this event, I had a friend staying over who only heard what happened from my room. So this morning I woke up to my mum calling, telling me to lock the front and back door and to not let my sister in. So I assumed that they had an argument. After the call ended, I did this and I returned to my room. A couple of minutes later, my entitled sister is in the back garden telling me to let her in for something whilst banging on the door constantly. After ignoring her, it went quiet for about 2 minutes when I get a phone call from my mum telling me that my sister is climbing the front of the house to get into an open window. For reference, the front of our house has a wall in front of it, and the front door, shower room, and hallway stick out, so she climbed from the wall to the part that sticks out into the window. I meet her at the window, and I can't exactly push her, so I let her in and try and close the bedroom door. By this time, my mum said she was calling the police before I put the phone down, so I was gonna try and keep her in the room while that happened. At this point, since I was unable to close the bedroom door, I put my back to her and blocked the doorway, because my sister said that she was gonna smash up the house. She was trying to get past me and slowly pushed me down the hall. Once we got close to the stairs, I tried to restrain her because I didn't want anything happening to either of us because she is still my pregnant sister. But I didn't restrain her properly, I guess, so she dug her nails into my neck, forearm, and then she bit the same arm. I have pictures, I just can't post them on this subreddit. Oh my. After this, I punched her in the back and let go. I didn't want to, it just kind of happened. While this happened, she was screaming police and that she couldn't breathe. Bear in mind, I never obstructed her breathing. After this, she walked down the stairs and got a bat from next to the front door and threatened me with it, though I doubt she would have actually hit me. Like a minute later, she climbed out of the living room window and waited for the police with her friend. When the police came, I gave my account of what happened. I was going to press charges in the moment, but my mum convinced me not to. But she is not to come near us or the house again. If she ever assaults me again, I will press charges. What a start to this episode. Okay, crazy start to this one. I've got no idea what's going on, what the family dynamic is at all, but the image of your entitled sister climbing up your house to get into an open window is just insane. The biting and the physical abuse and stuff, yeah, less funny. But the first bit of that was just so amusing. The fact it's your sister and she's pregnant as well, just the risk of doing that is so stupid. But then again, you said that she smokes cigarettes, weed, and vapes while pregnant. So yeah, I probably should have guessed that she'd do something as stupid as this. What a woman. I'd love to meet her. Let's move on. Now for our second entitled people story of this episode. But it's just a few dollars. I just witnessed, quite possibly, the most entitled interaction of my life. I, a 40-year-old woman, was at my local convenience store, talking to the owner's daughter. She needed help with homework and was asking everyone if they could help her understand it. Shakespeare isn't for everyone, but it's something I thoroughly enjoyed at school. I'm in there almost daily, so they know me. In walks this woman, probably around my age, and she begins gathering items and dumping them on the counter, completely disregarding other customers who were already at it. This goes on for a few minutes, and then she goes to pay. At this point, the clerk is serving someone else, and this woman interrupts the transaction and states, "My items are on the counter, so you shouldn't be serving anyone else, as I'm clearly waiting to be served." I always believed that, in order to be served in a store, you had to physically be in a line or at the counter. Maybe I'm wrong. The man being served smiles at this woman and says something along the lines of he's buying smokes and needs 30 seconds to complete his transaction, and she can just wait. This led to much huffing and puffing from the woman. She then turns to me and says, "Can you believe the audacity of some people?" I can't help but giggle before I reply with, "No, but I really do appreciate the irony." She didn't get the joke. By now, the guy has left and the clerk is ringing up her items and putting them into bags. He finishes and tells her the total, which was $30-something. She tells him he will take $25 because that's all she has. He tells her he will willingly take the $25, providing she removes sufficient items to ensure it covers her bill. Introduce tantrum, stage right. "I need everything. You can't deprive me of my needs. Who do you think you are? I'm calling my husband." The clerk doesn't miss a beat and replies with, "Well, make sure he brings his wallet." Now, the kid and I have completely forgotten about Shakespeare and are enjoying the theatre production unfolding in front of us. Out comes her phone, and she's scrolling furiously while repeating, "Just wait until he gets here." Again, the clerk doesn't miss a beat and says, "I have no other choice but to wait. My shift doesn't end for another 3 hours." She literally stamps her feet while shouting, "But it's only $10. I'm also at the point of having to put my fist in my mouth to stifle my laugh. This woman calls her husband and puts the phone on speaker. He answers, and she puts on this really pitiful, whiny voice. "Baby, I'm at this store and the clerk is holding me and 2 other females hostage. You need to come and rescue us." This guy must be all too familiar with his wife's antics and says, "You can't really be held hostage and be allowed to use your phone. So either you didn't have enough money or you're trying to buy alcohol without ID." I didn't stifle the laughter, and now this woman has 3 people openly laughing at her. She has to sheepishly admit it was the former. Her husband then says, "If you leave the chips, candy and soda behind that you don't need and that we have more than enough of in the house, I'm sure you'll have enough money." She started to protest, and her husband uttered, "I've told you about doing this. Say one more word and I'm cancelling your birthday." She stamped her foot again as she hung up and told the clerk to remove the suggested items so that she does have enough to cover the bill. As she's about to leave, she actually asks that no one posts about this on Reddit. Wow, that is just a wonderful story. You know what? I think that might be the first time. Correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, if you've been around on the channel for a long time and you can remember a time where this has happened. But I don't think we've ever seen anyone before in any of these stories ask that nobody posts about it on Reddit. That is so good. I know that Reddit has obviously blown up and subreddits like this are much more popular now than they were a few years back. But still, for someone to say, okay, maybe just nobody posts about this on the internet and let me be, is so funny. She clearly knows from what her husband has told her that what she's done is terrible. What I don't get is, from his perspective, why is he still with her? Maybe he kind of likes the fact that she is just so dumb and he has to keep her in line, but it's a bit weird as to why, you'd be with a woman like this. Nonetheless, makes for funny stories, I guess. Now for our next story. We aren't a dang daycare. So, quick background. I work at a private kindergarten that is a school, not a daycare. We teach math, reading, manners, writing, etc. Obviously, it's very simplified. We have a schedule that is posted weekly of our classes, and children have to test to get in. Due to where we are located, one of the richest neighborhoods in a very large city, most of our children come from wealthy families. Up until now, this has not caused any more issues than children bragging about their social level and then being humbled by not even knowing what money is, as is to be expected. However, I have a family that is incredibly entitled in my class. When their child arrives, she has to strut around a bit and make everyone stop and say hi to her, which is fine since she's 5 and what else should we expect? But the issue is that she shows up 5 minutes before lunch almost every day, interrupting my class when my students all get up to go and hug her. Our first issue with these parents bringing her late is that her parents refuse to let us know when they're doing it and why they are doing it. They won't answer the phone if we call, and they'll lie to us if we ask if they're coming today. For example, my partner teacher called and got through to the mother and asked if the child would be coming the next day, as we had an activity to plan. And the mother explained they had an issue with some documents that day, and that's why they couldn't come, but they'd certainly be there for the activity. Well, guess who didn't show up and who didn't call? On top of this, the child is straight up failing every subject. Halfway through the school year, they don't know the alphabet, they can't do basic math, they can barely count to 10, Meanwhile, the rest of the class has excelled in all areas, and there are 5-year-olds that are already reading and doing basic addition. But this child's mother complains that the homework is too hard for the child, as if they ever actually do it. We have to deal with this almost every day. Alright, halfway through this, guys, I've got to interject and just say, why haven't you kicked out this child yet? It's not the fault of the child, but just if a family is this difficult, and you said it's an incredibly competitive school, right? But if a family is this difficult and it's disrupting everyone else, just get them out of there. Anyway, let's carry on. OP says, I say almost every day because lately she has started showing up at 3:15 and school ends at 3:20. Her parents bring her just for her after-school programs, which she greatly enjoys, but I'm fed up with it. The school is actually struggling to keep children due to some staffing mess-ups, way too complicated to get into, so they can't tell the parents to pound sand when they show up at the end of the day, and no one is willing to tell them off at all. Okay, makes sense a little bit, I suppose. Due to this, the child hasn't attended a single class in almost a week, showing up just as the other children leave to attend the fun programs. What really gets me is that they clearly don't need a school right now. They're clearly home with her until 3 p.m. and only drop her off for 2 hours. They don't want her actually learning, which has put her far behind her peers in this area. And the way this child acts in the country we live in Asia, wherever they go from here, elementary, international school, another kindergarten, whatever, she is in for the rudest awakening of their life. If they return to their home country, I know for a fact she'll be beaten for the way she acts on the rare occasion that she is in class. These parents are so entitled that they don't realize they're setting their child up for failure. They treat us like garbage, like a daycare, instead of the school we are. And I'm just sick of it. If it were up to me, I'd start fining them for coming later than lunch. If that doesn't work, I'd kindly tell them to take the kid to an actual daycare because they are wasting our dang time. Okay, you know what? I actually retract what I previously said in terms of it being understandable that these guys haven't been chucked out yet. I do not care what is going on with your company, with your private kindergarten. Just get them gone. Like, I don't even mind if it's going to cost you a lot of money. You've got to do it. It's impacting everyone to such an extent that I'm sure that, yeah, losing a little bit of money isn't great, but I'm sure you can deal with that and just have a much easier working career and life without them there. And, you know, the other families will probably see the benefit as well of that long term. It's definitely in the interest of this kindergarten to just get rid of this family once and for all. They can find something else. I agree with OP. I mean, yeah, an actual daycare. That's what they're looking for. Why don't they just go to that instead? I would also kind of think like that. I don't blame OP for this at all, or the kindergarten. But you shouldn't be allowing a 5-year-old kid to come into a class like that late, waltz around, and like say hello to everyone and get hugs and high fives from everyone. If anything, they should be told to sit down and not be late again. And then, you know, at least they would get that message sort of drummed into them that they can't just waltz in at any moment and just act like a queen. If anything, that's enabling their entitled behavior. And I know it's not your fault, OP, that this child is like this. It's obviously her parents, but you have to start helping out, right? That is one of the main points of school and education. It's not just for you know, getting clever, but it's also, of course, for teaching an individual how to behave, right? You said yourself that you actually teach manners. Where are the manners here? Again, not putting the blame solely or even massively on OP, but yeah, I didn't really understand that bit. But nonetheless, these people have to go. Now for our final story of this episode. The smartest guy in the whole wide restaurant. So, a while ago, me, my girlfriend and her friends went to a fondue place for her birthday. It was a really popular spot, so when we got there were already 15 or 20 people waiting outside the restaurant. We put our names on the list and were hanging out, chatting and waiting for our table. There were 2 outdoor tables with people eating while we waited, and one group finished up and left, leaving the table empty. Enter smart guy and his girlfriend. This guy walks up to a restaurant and sees 20-ish people standing outside around an empty table with used plates and silverware still on it, and just sits down at the table with a very smug look on his face, like he's figured out a life hack that all the other people in line were too stupid to think of. Everyone outside is giving this guy the stink eye now. His girlfriend, who unlike him does have the ability to feel shame, starts trying to tell him they need to put their name on the list, and he can't just claim a table at a busy restaurant just because nobody else is currently sitting there. The guy, who is fully being glared at by at least 6 other people a few feet away from him, doubles down and explains to her that that's not how it works. He was the first to claim the table, and he doesn't want to move and give someone else the opportunity to take it. She tries in vain to argue, but smart guy just gets on his phone and continues tuning the rest of the world out. Then, like 30 seconds later, a waitress comes out to clean the table. And when she sees him, she's like, "Yeah, you can't sit there. There's a huge waiting list. Do you seriously not see all these people around you?" And some people outside start laughing at him or making comments. His girlfriend is freaking mortified, and as soon as the guy sheepishly gets up, she insists they leave as she's too embarrassed to eat with him in public. It's just wild to me the way that some people will double down on behavior that they know is wrong just because they think admitting their wrongness makes them look stupid. It's just being stubborn, that's all it is. This guy, I'm sure, just thinks that he is, the dog's balls, for want of a better phrase, and has probably been able to do this in the past and has gotten away with it, but thankfully now is being called out on it. Everyone has met or knows somebody like this, don't they? They're just terrible. They just think that they are above everyone else in society, and I don't know why, because they're not. If anything, they're below other people, just because they're so stupid and arrogant. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't know why people do this sort of thing. Like, as you've said, OP, how does this person just not have any shame or guilt for what they're doing? If I did this and I saw 6 people glaring at me, I'd probably think, even if I didn't know it was wrong, even though it so clearly is, I'd probably think, I wonder if I'm doing something wrong here. And also, I cannot face the fact that 6 people are glaring at me and then just get on with my meal. I don't know how people do it. They've just got no awareness at all. But yeah, this guy is just clearly a bad bloke, and his girlfriend should not just not eat with him in public, but how about just not eating with him ever at all and sacking him off? That's what I'd recommend. My small town is fighting over Chinese food. This is entitled people on the large scale, and it's too hilarious not to share. I live in a small town with a population of 7,000 roughly, and everyone is currently divided over a Chinese restaurant. It's been in the local news and Australia's national news. That's how crazy people are getting. Okay, after this, I'm definitely going to look that up. That's unreal. Back in May of this year, a local Chinese restaurant owner informed the local club he was renting kitchen space from that he wanted to retire, and he gave them his resignation, stating his last operating day would be the end of June. Cue the local Karens and Kevins en masse. One local, who we will call Big Kevin, teamed up with another local we will call Mega Karen, and they decided they were going to protest against the closing and force the club to keep the restaurant open. This poor man has been running the restaurant for 30 years without break and just wanted to retire peacefully. But no, Mega Karen started a petition while Big Kevin organised a protest. A protest about the closing down of a Chinese restaurant. Oh my god, that's unbelievable. Now, our third major player in this we shall call the Wicked Witch. The Wicked Witch, working in the shadows, starts leaking to the local paper that said restaurant owner is being forced out by the club, a false allegation. The club gives their first and only statement about the situation, stating that the restaurant owner retired and even produced his retirement paperwork for proof. At this point, the national news comes into it and does an interview with the restaurant owner, who states on the news that he just wants to retire. You would think that would be the end of it, but no. Mega Karen gets 1,200 or so signatures on her petition, which she hands to the club. 1,200 people have signed saying they do not want to let this man retire and that he must continue making Chinese food. Okay, the club's lawyer though calls it invalid due to over 900 of the signatures not being filled in properly. Right, okay, that's signature, printed name, and club membership number or phone number that's needed by each person to make it valid. Or the same person signed multiple petition slots. So, Mega Karen starts a new petition, which only gets 74 signatures. It makes sense now. Meanwhile, Big Kevin organises a protest, but he doesn't show up for it, and nor does anyone else. The club then hosts a meeting for all club members of the general public, and the club's board to discuss what is going on. But again, for all the complaints, no one actually shows up. Now Mega Karen and Big Kevin are demanding that a new meeting be held, the club's general manager be fired, and the club's board be disbanded and a new board elected. The Wicked Witch then once again goes to the newspaper with a statement from the restaurant owner. The restaurant has now been closed for over a month and states that now that the club has renovated the restaurant and has plans to start a new one, they, the old restaurant, would consider renting the space again. Before you question why the space wasn't renovated before this point, it was part of the Chinese restaurant's agreement that they would maintain and renovate the space as they saw fit, as stated by the club in their public statement. And she tells the paper that the whole reason the Chinese restaurant left wasn't because they wanted to retire, but because their rent increased from the $285 a week they've paid for 28 years to $385 a week last year, and then $485 a week this year for a restaurant space, when other local restaurants are paying $2,500 a week plus for the same or smaller places. So Big Kevin, Mega Karen, and a ton of other locals were all shocked at the cost of rent, which they are all now saying should have been kept at the $285 to encourage the restaurant to stay, even though it meant likely closing the club since they were struggling to afford running costs. The club even broke down their running costs to show the members and locals how expensive it is to keep the place open, but still not good enough. I can't with this town anymore. There we go. Now, I've done a little bit of digging there, and unfortunately, I can't find any sort of news article about this. But I do believe OP. So if you guys want to do some extensive digging of your own to potentially find out whether or not, this has had some articles written about it. I mean, if it's made national news, you'd imagine it has done, right? Then feel free and drop a comment down below letting me know if you found something and link to an article. But yeah, I can't find anything in myself. But one thing that is really funny, and just having a look through the comments, is that OP has said in the comments down below that what makes this all the more ridiculous is that there is another Chinese restaurant that is pretty popular, literally just around the corner. But no, there has to be a petition made about this one in particular. It's crazy. I don't think I've ever seen this level of fuss about a restaurant closing down. Now, don't get me wrong. When your favorite restaurant closes down, it's gutting. It is. It really is. I've been there. But to stop or try and force a petition to stop somebody from retiring is insane. I feel like this is a pretty apt story given what's gone on in the last week or so with the death of one of the most famous men and most iconic individuals potentially on the internet ever. That is succulent Chinese mealman himself. He probably would have protested, whereas no one else in this story did. He would have been the man to do it. Rest in peace. Okay, now for our second Entitled People story. Entitled People humbled at passport control. I think this is the first time in a long time that I saw a group of people act entitled. They were yelled at by other people in line, and they actually listened. I was waiting in the passport line in Iceland, where a lot of flights land very early in the morning, and I had a short layover, I think around an hour, before connecting to a new flight. Me and so many others got off our flight that landed at 6:30 a.m. We waited in passport control and we had to make a connecting flight taking off at 7:20. The non-EU side of the passport line had nearly 200 people waiting in it, and it was going about as fast as it could. So slow, and that's just the reality of it. At 6:30 a.m, most people took their tiredness and knew the best bet was to just wait in line and hope the flight waits for most of its passengers. Or just quietly accept that connection isn't going to happen. Except for one family. Back of the line, one man goes nearly to the front and pesters this half-awake 20-year-old kid about cutting in front of him because his flight is leaving soon. You don't say, everyone's is. The kid says, sure, I don't blame him, it's too early to argue. The line cutter waves to the back and shouts, he said we can go in front of him. And 6 other entitled folks, his family, I presume, they were all dressed in matching tropical vacation clothes, come striding their way up to the spot in the front. Cue uproar from the whole line. What do you think you're doing? Go to the back. Go back to where you were. You aren't special. The line cutter tried to reason his way and say, but we have a connection that leaves at 7:30. And the resounding, we all do too, from the rest of the line was poetic. It was gratifying in real time to see the man look around and see 200 people in the exact same situation as him and that he was not special. He finally, sheepishly waved his family back to go back to his old spot at the back of the line. I finally made it through passport control and made it to my flight at around 7:10. And my EU partner was able to get to the gate quicker, EU speedy line perks, and begged them to hold the gate and wait for me there, and I was one of the last ones on the flight. I was in the front third of the passport line while the line cutters were way behind me, so I don't know if they made their flight or not, but at least it was some morning entertainment. Now, interestingly, the same sort of thing as what's happened in this story happened to me not too long ago. I was flying out of an airport and it was very busy. It was so early in the morning. I was with my mates. We were knackered going to... Where were we going? We were going to Nice, actually, in France. A lovely place. And what happened was I kind of just let them through because I didn't really care. And also, we were early for our flight compared to other people that were scrambling to get through. This was like through security and stuff. It wasn't even passport control. We weren't even there yet. Now, was it annoying? Yeah, it was. But would I actually genuinely have said, like, no, stop? Like, you know, I'm going to go through as well. We're all in the same predicament. I actually think I would if I was in the same predicament because it is extremely annoying. So, like, if I had a flight that I also had to make, now, I wasn't in a rush because I'm sensible with my time, especially when it comes to flying. I probably would have done the same thing. But, yeah, I mean, I just didn't really care enough to get into any sort of confrontation. So I was just like, yeah, go on, go through. Don't really mind. But yeah, in this situation where everybody is queuing up for the same exact thing, everyone knows they're late, everyone's got connecting flights to go through, don't do this. Although I will say, it's actually one of the first times that I can remember in which an entitled person, or at least an entitled group, has said, actually, yeah, you know what, we're wrong. Or maybe they don't think they're wrong, but they've backed down, is what I'm trying to say. How often do you see that? Remember the story the other day where the guy sat down at a table in a restaurant outside with his girlfriend or wife, and she was just shocked because there was a queue for tables and seats, but he was like, no, I'm sitting here, I'm doing this. Everyone said to him, you're wrong, but he didn't care. That is kind of what I'd expect to happen here, but no, didn't happen. I guess kind of respect, but also, like, how are you so oblivious that you didn't realize that everyone was getting on the same flight? It's probably pretty obvious, or that everyone was in a rush or had connecting flights. I don't know. It's not really a positive thing ultimately. But yeah, let's carry on. Now moving on to our third story. Angry boomer demands I bend over backwards to accommodate his hatred of technology. I work retail, and this guy bought something online and had it delivered. After receiving it, he decided he didn't want it anymore, so he asked to return it for a refund. I said, sure, no problem, just send it back with the returns form found on our website and ship it back to us. He then got super angry that he had to print off a form. Like most people my age, I don't have a freaking printer. So I said, okay, fine, don't print out the form, just include a handwritten note and ship it back to us. And how am I supposed to do that? By taking it to the post office? And what? You're expecting me to pay for shipping? Well, it's your choice to send it back. So, back in my day, stores provided a little something called customer service. I expect to receive that from you as well. Annoyed at the entitlement, but also just exhausted of the BS, I agreed to provide a return label. I asked him to move the conversation to email though, since I can't provide him a return label over the phone. So he sent his email, rehashed all his nonsense from the phone call, and I replied with this. I can provide you a return label, but you need to be able to print it off so you can attach it to the item. That was 2 months ago, and he never replied to that email. Today, he called me back. Hi, it's Bob. Remember me? Sorry, Bob, but I speak to many people every day. You'll need to refresh my memory. And with that, he was fuming again. It was like me not remembering him was the worst sort of insult. He rehashed everything again, and then it all came flooding back. My immediate thought was, didn't this happen months ago? And I was right, it did. I checked the email chain and I sent my email on June the 16th. He again complained about having to ship it back himself and having to have access to a printer, but I just said, because I was annoyed, that's the way the world works now. I can't change that. So he said, I'm sick of this. I've had enough of this for today. I'll call back later. Then he hung up. I was hoping that would be the last of him for another 2 months, but no, he replied to my email from 2 months ago within an hour. He again started complaining about how we have made this difficult for him and that we should make accommodations for people that don't have a printer. I replied saying, we can provide you with a PDF of the label, and if you don't have a printer, then you could ask a friend or a relative or even the post office to print it for you. Now, here is the kicker, the absolute cherry on top of his entitlement. This is your problem to fix, not mine. Your store has set up a system that requires the use of a printer without any consideration for people that are too old to use modern technology. I will not go out of my way to fix a problem that you created. You need to tell the courier to print the label themselves and have them deliver the label to my house. Wow, I haven't replied yet, but there are so many things I would like to say. Firstly, this is our system? Welcome to the 21st freaking century, you decrepit C word. It's sentences like that, by the way, guys, that make me really want to change the fact that I don't swear on this channel. Just such a beautiful sentence. But yeah, can't read it. Obviously, got to censor it, but wow, so good. Anyway, we didn't invent the need for a printer. Couriers are the ones that generate the PDFs, not us, but that is the easiest way to do it. Your refusal to understand that does not make you right. Secondly, this is definitely a you problem. I understand not owning your own printer, because I don't own one either, but you could easily take the PDF to a friend or a family member that does have one. Even if you don't have friends, shocking, or a family, you could take the item to the post office and ask them to print the label and stick it on the frickin' parcel, but no, you have such a vendetta against technology that you refuse to partake in it. It's almost as if you think finding a printer somehow enables this behavior, and your refusal to use a printer is an act of defiance meant to break us from our reliance on technology so we can go back to a simpler time. Well, buddy, I've had enough. Either pay to ship it back yourself or forget about your refund. You don't want to enable our reliance on technology, that's fine, but I don't want to enable your entitlement. So if this is our stalemate, so be it. We don't lose anything. You're the one that wants to return it, all because you changed your mind. So the next move is yours. Wow, that last paragraph was phenomenal. And I think it sounds like the start of a genuine superhero movie, or just like a hero versus villain movie. And I want to see it, guys. I don't know about you, but I want to see it. See, this right here is why I would try my hardest in my life to never have to work in a sort of job where, and I'm not like trashing on these sort of jobs, by the way. People that do it are extremely good at it a lot of the time. But yeah, customer service, I just do not think I have the sort of temperament to do well in this at all. I think I just get like so angry or annoyed at just idiots like this. To be fair to OP, like, you've shown pretty great patience there. And I know eventually you've got annoyed and said the right thing, in my opinion, like actually been hard and said, nah, come on, you're taking the mick here. But I just couldn't deal with this sort of stuff. If you guys work in customer service, let me know down below. How often does this sort of stuff happen to you, where you're just like, I cannot believe how ridiculous the person that I'm speaking to on the other end of the line is. And like, what are they doing? How dumb are they? Because this is just ridiculous. Yes, this man clearly does just have a vendetta against technology, but he's taking it out on you. You don't deserve that, but you dealt with it well. Now for our final Entitled People story of this episode. Karen angry that I snapped at her kid after said kid screamed into my ear. So this happened a few years ago at a major airport in the US. I worked as a pilot for an airline, and in the course of my duties, I ride our aircraft to and from home to our crew base. I often did this out of uniform, with my only identifying feature being my work ID or lanyard. My last flight before time off put us on the ground around noon. Being off duty, I immediately changed out of my uniform and took a seat from the gate where my flight home would depart from. Behind me, there was a rambunctious child whom was using the seats as her personal playground and randomly squealing and screaming while doing so. While this is annoying and the squeals are like nails on a chalkboard to me, it is the reality of things. I just ignore it and I browse through my tablet. The next thing I know, I catch a full scream into my ear. I turn my head and the kid is literally a couple of centimeters from my face and is hanging off the back of my chair. I immediately snapped at the kid. Do not scream into my ear. That is when the Karen mother, who was just letting this happen, loses her head. She darts up, standing over the seat behind me, yelling at me, "Don't you yell at my kid! How dare you!" The kid, meanwhile, has a shocked look, but settles down or goes silent. Karen, though, continues on, trying to goad me into arguing with her and doing everything but actually putting hands on me to escalate this into a physical fight. She even tries to encourage her kid to scream again, to which the kid just sat there quietly. I initially stare at her for a few seconds, then I went back to ignoring her and the situation and just go back to looking at my tablet. She continues having a meltdown for 10 minutes before the man with her collected her, the kid, their things and went elsewhere. I feel bad for the kid, as I cannot see her future ending well with that sort of guidance. It was also a shame that the mother flipped, as I likely would have given the kid wings that my company supplies us with after the kid calmed down. Well, hopefully after this lady has learned that if she doesn't discipline her kid for doing stuff that is just downright rude and obnoxious and just wrong, then somebody else eventually will. Doesn't necessarily mean that it had to be you in this situation, but I'm sure this has happened a lot of the time in the past. And it needs someone like you to eventually make her realize what is she doing as a parent? How can you be enabling this sort of stuff? Again, as I always say, with children that are extremely young, or even just young, I don't blame them. You can't really blame a kid for going mental, but you can blame a parent for not parenting. Simple as that. And yeah, you know what? Fair play for shouting at the kid. Probably just shocked her. Something that her mum has clearly never done. She's probably never heard the words "stop doing that" in her life. Crazy, but yeah, good job. Entitled college roommates were mad I didn't cook for them, and they wanted me to pay for the ingredients. I refused, and they threw my stuff in the trash. I debated telling this last story after the whole saga with my mother-in-law and ex-wife, but I mentioned it before so many times that I may as well tell it. But it will probably be my last post here. I know it seems I dealt with a lot of terrible people in my life. I suppose I was just a magnet for it. My terrible mother, my terrible ex-wife, my terrible mother-in-law passed away before becoming my ex-mother-in-law, my bad co-worker that gave out my phone number to my mother, and lastly, some bad roommates from my college days. But beyond all of that, I haven't really dealt with much anyone else of note. Guys, in case you're wondering, this Redditor is someone whose stories I've read out quite a few times over the course of my channel. If you've been around for a while, you'll probably get one of the references they've just made there to one of the stories I've narrated. But this is a brand new one. Let's get into it. OP says, I've got good friends, a good job, and I'm physically active. But there were times I was just drawing in narcissists. Hopefully no more. Back in college, I had to deal with 3 bad roommate guys for 6 months. It was community college, so no dorm. Just a rundown apartment that looked right out of the 80s. I was balancing school and part-time work, so didn't have a lot of money. The funny thing is, I was literally the only one there who knew anything about cooking, much less did dishes. I wasn't one of those hardcore couponers, and there was really only 2 good stores in walking/biking distance. One a typical supermarket, the other a small discount food store. That's where I went the most. I was also no stranger to the local thrift store. My roommates mostly just ate junk food or whatever else they could grab that was already made. So, for obvious reasons, I couldn't keep leftovers. We also had fights about them not doing their share of the cleaning, but that was resolved later as well. 2 of these guys said they were friends before college, and the 3rd roommate fit right in with them for a while. The drama over the food first started when I made myself an egg sandwich for breakfast. 2 eggs over easy or medium with your choice of cheese, bread and mayo. It's actually pretty good and a solid breakfast. One of my roommates saw me eating it and asked for one too. I apologetically said no because I was on a tight food budget and the frying pan was already in the sink. He rolled his eyes at me and groaned. I told him they were easy to make them himself if he bought the ingredients, but he balked at the notion. Another day, I made mashed soft-boiled eggs for breakfast. That attracted more attention. It's eggs boiled just enough to where the whites are cooked, but the yolk is still liquid. You then peel the shell off and mash the eggs in a bowl with a fork. It can be easy to mess up, and I only really succeeded half the time, but it's great with just basic seasoning and sometimes hot sauce. I haven't made it in a while, but I like to eat it on toast and sometimes over rice. I also made egg salad from time to time. Eggs were cheap and basically $1 a carton at the discount store. I'm also not a big fan of cereal as I had to eat it a lot growing up, and I prefer a warm breakfast without a lot of sugar. No matter how much I told my roommates they could cook their own food if they let me show them how, they just kept complaining that I made food that they weren't allowed to eat. Even though they wanted to eat good food at home, they were completely unwilling to put in any effort. Compared to these guys, I was the only broke person there. They all had the latest gaming consoles and new laptops. One of them even had a car. I had an old N64 and CRT TV that were pity gifts from friends years prior, a GameCube that I'd splurged on, and a used laptop I got secondhand. My roommates were near constantly gaming, watching YouTube, and being general couch potatoes when not in class. Hang on a second here, OP. What's wrong with watching YouTube? That's what I did, and still do to be fair, for many hours a day. Anyway, let's carry on. Sorry, a little bit sidetracked there. I think they thought I'd be a pushover at first, but I'm the kind of guy that seems chill till you push me one step too far. And they did this by stealing my game systems and my food. Here's what happened. One evening, I made something good for my dinner. I don't remember specifically what it was, but it might have been tilapia fillets. I ate those a lot. I even made them into spicy fish burgers. My roommates all ganged up on me over how their dinners always sucked unless they ate out. I mean, maybe just cook something nice then? Sorry to interject again, but just pull your finger out if you want some nice food. Make it. No one's going to make it for you. You've moved out of home now. It's insane. Anyway, microwave food all around for them on many nights. And they wanted me to finally make something nice for everybody. I told my roommates that, okay, if they each kicked in $5, I'd make us all a nice spaghetti dinner the next day. They agreed. My biggest mistake was not collecting the money from them in advance. So you're just asking for $5 from them to make a lovely meal. You know, they don't have to put any effort in and they just get to enjoy it. But okay, I see where this is probably going to go. I went out and got some ground beef, a jar of sauce, a loaf of garlic bread, the noodles, and canned green beans for a side. I whipped up a great dinner. But when I wanted the money from each of them, they laughed at me and refused. They played what they did off as a joke. When I didn't accept that answer, they told me they were sick of me flaunting my cooking around them and never sharing it. I gave them all the finger and told them I'd never cook for them again. And I stuck to that. They actually tried several more times. Oh my goodness, the audacity. And I always refused. They even offered to pay me again, but still refused to pay me for the first time. So I'm sure they would have just pulled the same stunt again. Money or no money, I had my pride. And I meant it when I said I'd never cook for them again. They started acting like kids whose parents wouldn't feed them around me, and were pretty angry when I called them out on it. I wasn't obligated to be their caretaker. I didn't know what kind of homes these guys came from, but they certainly weren't used to not getting their way. Yes, exactly. I mean, we all know. I can picture these guys right now. I can picture myself even having a conversation with them. I know what they sound like. I know what they'd say. I know they'd just be like the biggest golden children ever. So stuck up. So spoiled as kids. It's just so obvious. Stop flaunting your cooking around us. It's unfair. It's the most insane thing I've ever heard. One day I came home from work and found all my food missing from the fridge and cupboards, and none of my roommates were home. I was furious and I couldn't even confront them. So I just tried to go and play video games to unwind. But my consoles were missing. I lost my mind. I went to see an acquainted neighbour living in one of the apartments down the hall, and I asked advice from him because he was the one who sold me the GameCube. He had an evil idea and said that he'd use his digital camera to record my roommates when I confronted them, if I wanted, but only if I paid him $20. I didn't really have a choice but to agree. When my roommates finally came back, they were all smug, until they realised their gaming consoles and laptops were all missing. They flipped out, threatening to kick my butt, but I held my ground and told them I wanted my stuff back, or I'd never tell them where their stuff was. It turns out they bagged up all of my food and threw it in the dumpster outside a few hours earlier. Then they hid my game system and TV somewhere in the building before taking off to a party. I asked them why they did that, and they claimed it was because they'd been drinking all day since it was a weekend, then tried to say it was just a stupid drunken joke, while also telling me that I'd gone too far. I laughed and said they were enormous hypocrites and a-holes to say I went too far after what they did. I just got even. One of them looked like he was ready to hit me, and I drew all their attention to the nearby window. That's when they all saw our neighbour outside the window, recording everything with his digital camera. He gave me an okay and took off down the fire escape before my roommates could do anything. I told them that guy just recorded their entire admission. That was bullying, theft, and underage drinking since we were all under 21 at the time. I told them I'd take that recording to the dean if they didn't make things right, because they wouldn't like having that stuff as part of their records. It was well known a couple of girls had been ousted from the college for roommate bullying the previous year, and of course drinking while underage is also a huge no-no. They all looked like the colour had drained from their faces. I told them I wanted my stuff back now and the cost of my food reimbursed. It was their move. They all took off outside as fast as they could. They came back with my game systems and games in a garbage bag, and even retrieved my food from the dumpster and expected me to just take it. But I refused to touch the food because it had been in the garbage for hours and I'd only accept cash. Additionally, they dropped my TV and it was broken, so I wanted that replaced too. They all hemmed and hawed, but finally asked me what I wanted. I said I wanted a new TV and $60 cash from each of them. They asked why that specific number. I said $50 each to replace my food they tossed, $5 each for the spaghetti dinner that they'd reneged on paying for, and then what remained for having to pay a guy to wait for 2 hours outside our window in the cold to record them. They all got their wallets out and begrudgingly gave me the money. They'd all previously bragged about how they had parents and scholarships footing their bills, so they easily had the cash. After getting paid, I told them where to find their stuff I'd hidden, and they stopped bothering me. One of them had a small flat screen TV in his stuff and just gave it to me to replace what they broke. And then we called things even. But after that, they avoided speaking to me if at all possible. Though eventually they all started getting on each other's nerves since I'd ruined their fun. They also never brought alcohol into the apartment again for fear that I'd snitch. And they did try to harass the guy I'd paid to record them. He said he'd take the recording to the dean himself if they bothered him again. So they were SOL to do anything about the situation. When the lease renewal came, 2 of the roommates opted to move out of the building because they and the third guy now hated each other. Yeah, they all hated me, but the 2 that left were especially the worst. But they liked each other just fine. Didn't bother to keep tabs on them once they were out, and the few classes we had together, they kept away from me in. And the one roommate that stayed actually made some improvement as a person, and made sure to tell the new guys who moved in not to mess with me at all. One of them was actually pretty cool though, and he liked cooking simple home meals like I did. He also liked Nintendo and bikes. He became my best friend and still is to this day. We even still play Mario Kart together when we can, and took up cycling together again once I separated from my ex-wife. He's been my greatest support ever, more so than any family I've ever had. Also, for those wondering where I'd hidden my roommate's stuff, I hid them all in their own suitcases that were already put away in the closet, which would have been one of the last places they'd have looked. They were all so annoyed it was all right there the whole time. Okay, there we go. That is the end of that one. Wow, what a story. And I just feel bad for this Redditor, because you guys will know if you've seen any of my other episodes that have stories in from this user. They've been through the mill, I think, to say the least, in their life. And yeah, they've finally gotten away from their parents, their horrible family, get to college, and you just met with horrible roommates like this. It can't get much worse. I mean, this is literally the definition of entitled people. Just like, I can't imagine doing this at all. It's just so crazy. Obviously, I went to university. I was in a dorm of my own, I suppose. People cooked different stuff. Some people cooked together. Some people cooked separately. Whatever. It was all chill. One thing that nobody ever did was say, "Oh my God, I can't believe that you're cooking a lovely meal and not making any for me for free. What are you doing?" Like, it just didn't happen. I don't understand how somebody can genuinely think like that. That's insane. And the funniest bit about all of this is saying it's actually unfair that you're doing this in front of me. It's just not right that you're doing this. I'm getting jealous to the extent that you need to stop doing this. It's very weird. Like, if you care that much, just learn to cook and just make some meals yourself. But I don't particularly love cooking. In fact, I would actually say that I don't dislike it. It's all right. I don't know, can't be bothered a lot of the time. But if somebody was making a lovely meal in front of me, I wouldn't tell them to stop because I can't be bothered to make nice food. That's insane. It really is. And then on top of that, OP offers them to like, an olive branch. Okay, I get it, guys. You don't like the fact that I'm good at cooking and you can't be bothered. But give me the money for the ingredients. I'll make us a nice meal. We can enjoy it together. You don't have to do anything. Just literally pass me a note of paper and you'll have a meal in front of you. You guys don't care about money anyway. You've said it. You've got rich families, whatever. And it's clear they have rich families that haven't brought them up that well. Let's be realistic here. But even then, no, they just take the mick out of you. Disgraceful people. And to be honest, I kind of wish that the dean had seen this stuff, because they've had no real repercussions from this, have they? Yeah, they've lost a bit of money, $60. But, what is that really to them? That's not going to make much difference in their lives, is it? Whereas getting kicked out because of bullying your roommate would have done. They're not going to change as people, I don't think, because of this. So, I don't know. It's probably easier for you not to go through that ordeal of taking that footage to the dean. I just genuinely wish you would have done. That's me. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments down below, guys. Do you think that OP should have just gone further than they did? This isn't a revenge subreddit. It would have been good revenge. This is just entitled people But yeah, maybe OP was a little bit too nice there and could have gone further. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Entitled Brother informed me that he would be taking my dog for 3 days without my permission. For those of you who aren't familiar with my stories, I am a 31-year-old woman, and I have a man-child entitled brother who is 26, who lives in the house I co-own with my mum. My mum has told him he has until May 31st to move out. This was originally posted 6 months ago in April of this year. I've been anxiously waiting for him to leave, doing my best to bide my time, but I finally reached the end of my rope, and for something that I'm not sure is the straw or the log that broke the camel's back. Last night, while I was in bed, my entitled bro informed me that he would be taking my dog, Spot, for 3 days on some fishing trip. I told him there's no way he could do that, but he said he wasn't asking, he was telling me. He said, he's my dog too, and that he's entitled to take him whenever he pleases. But here's the thing. 9 years ago, my entitled brother demanded a dog. I begged my mum not to get him one. He had one previously, but neglected it, and my mum ended up rehoming it, for which he never let her hear the end of it. But of course, she caved, and the same problem persisted. My entitled brother never cared for Spots. I ended up taking over his care. I paid for his vet bills, I fed him, I took him to get groomed, etc. Things came to a head when we had to move in with family members, and they said we were not allowed to bring a dog. My entitled brother didn't do anything to find Spot a new home. It was my problem. I found him a foster home, where I visited him every day after my college classes ended, and I was able to get him back 2 years later when we finally had a place to live again. Additionally, when I moved out of my house for a year, Spot went with me. Spot sleeps with me every night and has my name on all of his records. He's now 10 and has arthritis. He takes meds for his hips and his stomach and needs frequent bathroom breaks. Oh, and he hates the water. So when my little bro said he wasn't asking me, he was telling me, I knew that Spot would be miserable and possibly in pain that whole trip. He hadn't asked or even mentioned taking Spot before, so he's due for a refill on his pills tomorrow. Had I known, I would have gotten the refill sooner. I tried telling him that Spot needs a lot of care, and he said, yeah, so just give me everything he needs. And I was so irritated. You wait until the night before to tell me this. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. I could have just taken him and let you panic, but I was being nice telling you ahead of time. That did it. I don't know why, but every alarm bell went off in my head. I grabbed my purse, put on my slippers, and told Spot to get in the car. I drove to my fiance's house and slept here last night. I was going to move into my fiance's house this summer, but now I'm asking myself, why the heck am I waiting? Everyone on Reddit keeps asking me why I stay home, and right now, I can't remember any of the reasons that I had before. I'm done. My mum is staying out of it right now, and I'm glad because I genuinely don't care what she has to say. I know she doesn't want me to go, but I just can't take my entitled brother's little power trips. He can do whatever he wants to the house. Punching holes in the walls, kicking the appliances, calling the house a dump, but I draw the line at him taking my dog without my permission. That's my baby, and I'm not going to just stand by while he does whatever he wants with my pet when I explicitly told him no, something that he rarely hears. P.S. I occasionally have asked my brother to let Spot out for bathroom breaks since he doesn't work until the afternoon, and his response is that he's always too busy to do that. He's given me no reason to trust him to care for my dog for even a few hours, let alone 3 days on a fishing trip. And also, one final edit here on the first post. My brother does not know where my fiance lives, and even if he did, my fiance's 2 huge German shepherds would devour him. Okay, so that was the initial post. Now, the great thing about this is that just 6 days ago at the time of recording, and remember I said that that initial post was made 6 months ago, we got an update. However, before we get into this, first of all, I don't think I've covered this person's stories before, but I feel like I really need to go back and have a look at their profile and see what stories and what accounts they've told about their brother in the past. This clearly is not the first post they've made, and I reckon there's probably quite a lot there. So let me know in the comments down below if after this you want me to go back on this person's profile and have a look at what they've posted on Reddit before. But without further ado, I'm excited to get into the update. As I said, just posted a few days ago and see what happened with Spot. Okay, so here we go. Let's get into the update. First of all, OP says, I would like to thank everyone for all their support, well wishes, and for reaching out to check on me and Spot. It was such a relief to know that so many of you would have had the same instinctual reaction to my situation. Yeah, I didn't give my thoughts there because, to be honest, It was pretty obvious. Spot is clearly your dog and would be in serious danger if he was left with your entitled brother. I think we can all agree on that. So, after many months, I finally have an update for you all. Firstly, my entitled brother has finally moved out. However, he didn't move out until the end of July. He was supposed to move out by May 31st, but my mother allowed him to push the date back twice. I wasn't pleased, but since I moved out abruptly in April, I couldn't let myself get worked up over it. I was focusing on making a safe space for Spot and myself. Secondly, since my entitled brother has moved out, my mother has made the house her own, and I am proud to say it's finally everything she envisioned it to be. The house looks immaculate now that my entitled bro isn't crowding her space. Actually, this is something that I'm going to have to go back and look at on this person's account. Was that talk about your entitled brother punching the walls and just trashing the house legit? I thought at the time it might be hyperbole, but wow, maybe it is legit. Anyway, let's carry on. She is very proud of all of her home improvement projects and always has something new that she wants to show me when I visit. She seems so happy. The only thing that concerns me is how uncharacteristically friendly my entitled bro has been acting with her since he moved out. More on that later. Thirdly, Spot is doing so much better since we went to live with my fiance and his 2 German shepherds. I think my fiance's dogs understood that Spot is older and not quite as athletic as them, but that didn't stop him from trying to keep up with them. After moving in, Spot's favourite pastimes include running around the huge yard, laying in the sun, and eating the little tasty nuggets that the chickens leave in the yard. Yes, I mean chicken poop. 4. If you have read this far and are wondering what took me so long to update, I do apologise for the delay, but I have a good reason. My fiance and I bought our first home. We fell in love with a tiny little house in our ideal area and have been working on renovating it. I'm very pleased to announce that we moved in last month. And if that wasn't good enough news for you, here is the biggest announcement of all. We got married. After all the hard work we put into the house, we knew it was the perfect place for us to tie the knot. We invited his dad, his siblings, and my mum over, and we had a quick ceremony in our living room amongst unpacked boxes and mix-match furniture. It was perfect. But this wouldn't be an Entitled People post without some Entitled Bro stories. Here are some of the highlights, for lack of a better term, of what I've dealt with since my last post. I mean, surely go with lowlights there, but to be honest, I think for us, reading this and listening to this, they are going to be highlights. For the 3 to 4 weeks after I moved out, my entitled bro would not stop asking, "Where's Spot? Where's my dog?" over and over. Now, I just ignored him, but while I was silent, he said a lot of very revealing things, such as, "I bet you won't bring Spot back because you're afraid I'll do the same thing to you," meaning taking off with Spot. Now, I wanted to point out the whole reason I felt the need to remove Spot was because he threatened to take my dog without my permission, but I didn't waste my breath. At one point, he got so worked up that he said, "Fine, don't tell me where Spot is. I'll find out," which only solidified my confidence that I made the right choice. Secondly, a couple of months ago, he had information that I needed in order to help our aunt with a task. My aunt asked him to please send me the info so I could complete the task for her. Now, he said he would, but never sent me anything, despite how many times she reminded him. It got to the point where the deadline was getting close, so I had to call and text him multiple times. He refused to give me anything, saying I needed to apologize for being so rude because I had the audacity to ask him for the info. I decided to act fed up and told him, forget it, someone else can do it. I then asked my cousin Molly to text him, saying that she was the one to contact instead. He sent the info to her instantly, and then of course I had Molly just forward it on to me. The look on his face when he later found out I was the one who took care of everything for my aunt was priceless. He enjoys having things to hold over my head. The final thing I will mention is my entitled bro was a nightmare for my mother until the day he moved out. He went through ways of giving my mum the silent treatment, then angrily hounding her for ruining his life, to having personal pity parties and saying things like he was so depressed and he didn't want to live anymore. My mum got so fed up that by his moving out day, she had no pity for him anymore, just actually secondhand embarrassment. But then he did something very strange. He was literally in the middle of yelling at her and blaming her for all of his shortcomings when he suddenly broke down and cried, saying he was so sorry for what he put her through. All he wants is to be loved by his mum and sister, and asking, "What would you do if I killed myself?" My mum said she thought it was a miracle from God, and I tried to gently ask her if it wasn't more likely that it was just a manipulation tactic. She said she is choosing to believe that this is a sign that her son is finally changing for the better. I find it very hard to believe. So now he acts as if he was never the hexspawn that plagued our home for 8 years, and my mum is so happy because she thinks that now her son is reformed. I think it's more likely that he's just trying to stay in her good graces because he wants to use her as a safety net. My mum claims she would now never take him back in unless it was a true emergency, but I don't know about that. That is the only thing about my entitled brother that makes me uneasy to this day. Other than that, I have no interest in dealing with him and will not be including him in anything. He does not have my address, and my relatives know not to share it with him. Although I have had to deal with a lot of drama these past few months, I am so relieved that I left that tumultuous home life when I did. If I hadn't, I wouldn't have had a safe space for myself or Spot. I wouldn't finally have a home of my own with someone who loves me completely. And I wouldn't have married the sweetest, most supportive man I've ever met. I'm so grateful to be able to write this happy update on my couch in my home with my husband at my side and my sweet Spot laying his head in my lap. Thank you again for being here for me and for waiting so patiently for an update. I hope it was worth the wait. Thank you. Okay, so there we go. A fantastic ending to this one. I'm glad that everyone seems, well, you especially seem to be getting on well. Spot sounds really happy. You obviously are. And your husband, yeah, fantastic news. I do agree with you though. Like, there's no way that just in one sort of split second does somebody suddenly realize how horrible they've been for the past 8 years and go, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I just don't feel loved by my mum and sister. Well, maybe there's a reason you don't feel loved by your mum and sister, and that's that 8 years of just pure entitlement. There's no way that somebody could just do that for 8 years and then suddenly be like, oh, sorry, I didn't actually realize what I was doing all this time. No, I don't believe it for 1 second. It's definitely a manipulation tactic. But anyway, that is the story with these guys up until, I suppose, the present day. So this was posted on February the 15th, 2022 on r/AmITheJerk. Would I be the jerk if I forced my mum to kick my brother out? I am a 29-year-old woman, and my brother, who is 23, lives in the same house as my mother and I. My mum and I bought this house a few years ago, and he's been living here for most of that time. He goes on and on about how much he just hates it here and can't wait to get his own place, yet seems to have zero initiative to actually do that. On top of this, he's a raging jerk to me and my mother. My mum is disabled, so she can't work, so I pay for 75% of all expenses, including all of our property taxes and house insurance. My brother has no education, and he works part-time at a local store, contributing only to his portion of the auto insurance and the electricity bill. He goes out of his way to pick fights with my mum, and, now that I have recently moved back home, with me. I had lived with my boyfriend all of 2021, but he recently broke up with me and I moved back home. I'm obviously still hurting, since the breakup is fresh, and I just want to live in a house that doesn't feel like a war zone. Whenever my mum and I see my brother walking up the pathway, we both retreat into our rooms because we just can't deal with him and his moods. Tonight he decided he didn't want some of my items crowding his door and was having a meltdown because a few of my items that I moved back from my ex's house were in his way. I had to get up out of bed and I asked exactly what he wanted moved so I could get them out of the way and get back to sleep. He started to berate me, saying stuff like, "Shut the F up, go cry on your pillow, you're pathetic. You're just upset because your boyfriend is cheating on you in your old house." Which makes me laugh because when he went through his breakup, I kindly listened and gave him plenty of advice when he asked for it. I've asked my mum many times if we can please kick him out because he owns no part of this house and he is the worst part of our daily lives. My mum acknowledges that he is the worst, but she doesn't want to kick him out because he's her son. She says I should just ignore him and stop bickering with him, but I feel like ignoring him is enabling him. I want him gone. Look, I love him because he's my brother, but the kid is seriously the worst human being I know, and neither my mum nor I need that energy in our house. I'm not sure what I can do to convince my mum to kick him out, but I'm getting to the point where I may have to live on my own. This is putting me in a horrible position because if I leave, I'll have to stop helping my mum financially, which she says she would understand. But if I stay, I'll have to deal with my nightmare of a brother. So, would I be the jerk if I forced my mum to kick him out? Okay, so there we go. That is where this story all began. And yeah, knowing now what I know and what we're going to come to very soon in the rest of this episode, and of course, the two stories that I read previously, yeah, obviously you wouldn't be the jerk here. But I'm just going to try and give some comments just purely based on what I've just read there. And yeah, still you wouldn't be the jerk. This guy just sounds terrible. He is also 23. It's not as if he's 16 and would have nowhere else to go. I mean, he wouldn't have anywhere else to go, which is tough, but you are 23. You can't expect to live in someone else's house at 23. Look, it's lovely that he is able to do that. And I mean, I was going to say that surely deep down he is grateful, but actually he's probably not. Maybe to wake him up and to you know, give him some sort of like jump start or like kick in the head to actually get going in life, he needs to be sent out of the house. I'm just not even sure how you'd even begin to do that. Like, it's quite hard to force your own brother out of your house, but yeah, you're definitely not the jerk for wanting him gone. Okay, now moving on to this user's second post. Brother emotionally scarred because I changed my name. This was posted 2 years ago on February the 19th, 2023. So that's almost an entire year after the original post on r/AmIThejerk. In fact, it is over a year after that post. So now OP is 30 and her brother is 24. She says, "We have never gotten along, mostly because he's entitled and thinks the world revolves around him. My parents have never gotten along either, which contributed greatly to why I grew up fairly down to earth, and my brother is a self-centered man-child. Recently, I changed my last name to my mother's maiden name. I had my dad's last name before, because I've never liked the last name I was given, and I've always wanted my name to reflect the family that raised me. My brother recently found out that I did this, and said, 'Oh, so you don't want to be my sister anymore? That's my last name. You don't want to be associated with me? Wow. I guess we know what side you're choosing. I can't believe you do this to me. So you're telling me that I'm supposed to be ashamed of my name then? Is that it? Did you even once stop to think how this was going to affect me?' Funnily enough, I answered, I didn't think of you at all. Yikes." Okay, so there we go. That is the second post. Now, I would like to move on to the third one, but unfortunately it's actually been deleted from r/AmIThejerk. It's been removed by the moderators there, probably because it has some sort of rules against guns. Actually, I'm not sure. It says here that the post violates Rule 12, that posts should focus strictly on actions in an interpersonal conflict and not an individual's position on a broad social issue. Anyway, look, the title's on screen right now. Would I be the jerk if I asked my brother to keep his guns in his room? So, you know, the reason this was probably deleted was because of, I guess, it got to a debate about gun control and gun laws in America, etc., which isn't allowed on here for whatever reason. But yeah, I think we can glean enough from the title of this one, and it helps us to sort of understand again a little bit more about who OP's brother is. I think keeping guns is one thing. Keeping them across the house, or maybe even asking his sister to keep them in her room as well, is crazy. Look, I know that a lot of you guys probably have different sort of views to me on gun control. I'm in the UK. I'm happy about that, is all I'll say. But yeah, this was the third post from OP, and it's been deleted. And sadly, Wayback Machine, if you know what that is down at the time of recording, so I can't get it. And I don't even think it would be on there anyway, because it was deleted pretty quickly. But there we go. Let's move on to the fourth post. Okay, so this one was posted on r/EntitledPeople on August the 8th, 2023. Entitled brother demands I thank him for cleaning my mess. So OP is now 31 and her brother is 25. She says, "My brother has always been an entitled brat. He's lived in my house, my mum and I bought and renovated it, for 5 years now." So, I mean, let's just go back to the would I be the jerk question that was 2 years before this one, where OP's brother was 23. Clearly, they didn't get him to move out, and it's been 2 years since that moment. Anyway, OP says, he didn't start contributing to the household bills until about 2 years ago, and he makes sure to throw that in mine and my mum's faces every month as if it's some big favour. He's always complained about living here and how miserable he is because he's treated so poorly. He's treated like a prince by my mum. And the house is such a mess, that's his quote. His room used to be our studio space, where my mum and I kept our workspaces and supplies. I'm a designer and my mum is an artist. When he moved in, we turned our living room into a makeshift office for ourselves, so our supplies are kept on various shelving units in our living space. My brother has always complained about how cluttered and dirty the house is, and how he hates living here, blah blah. I've told him repeatedly that if he doesn't like it, he doesn't have to live here. He said I should accommodate him instead because he's family and family should respect each other. It's a small house and we were doing our best with what little space we have, but he says it's embarrassing that we don't have a space for a couch and TV. We actually used to until he moved in. 2 months ago, he announced that he is being forced to move in with his girlfriend because he can't live like this anymore. Because my mother and I are just so awful for asking him to help with the bills, and we have the audacity to have our workspaces in the living room. Since he informed us of this, he hasn't packed a single box, and he refuses to give me any kind of time frame. But I overheard him telling his dad he expects to move out in September. Today I came home to a bunch of stuff, including kitchen items like sodas and snacks, stacked in my room and on my work desk, which had my laptop and my design drawings on the tabletop. I was confused and annoyed because I was afraid they'd been crushed. I asked my mum if she did that. She told me it was my brother. I went to him to ask why the heck he did that and that I didn't appreciate him moving my stuff and potentially ruining my work. He went off on me, saying he made an executive decision to finally clean up. I laughed because he has his own bathroom and the largest bedroom, and they're both filthy. He decided my mum's and my things needed to be allocated to our spaces and kept out of the communal spaces, the kitchen and dining area. His logic was since I'm the only one who consumes certain sodas and snacks that they need to be kept in my room. None of his foods or drinks were taken out of the kitchen, by the way. Anything that he didn't deem worthy of being in the communal spaces, he just tossed into a pile on mine and my mother's desks and in our rooms. Mind you, his shoes, moving boxes and bags are all over the hallway. My mum and I always have to step over his trash when we walk by his room, and we don't move anything. I told him he needs to respect our things and our space, but he said it's not for me to dictate. I said, yes it is, it's my house, but he wouldn't hear it. He screamed at me, saying I had to thank him for cleaning my mess and that I better apologize for being so ungrateful. I reminded him he's moving out, so why would he be bothered about how my house looks? I told him I can't organize anything until he moves out, and he lost his mind, saying, how freaking dare you? I guess you can't wait for me to leave. I rolled my eyes and told him that not everything I say and do is a personal attack on him. He was screaming at me, saying that my power trip is my way of abusing him. I got fed up by that point and walked away to avoid losing my cool. It takes a very deluded person to make demands and set rules that never seem to apply to him in someone else's home. The entitlement. Okay, so there we go. A little insight there into the living situation between OP, her brother and her mum before the content from yesterday's episode, the latest 2 stories in this saga. Yeah, it seems to me, and this is probably quite obvious from yesterday's episode, that this has just been a continuing thing for a number of years. And it sort of adds to the point that I was trying to make at the end of today's episode, that you don't just suddenly change your whole opinion after 8 years of being as entitled as your brother clearly is, OP. Like, he has been a terrible person, a terrible housemate, a terrible brother, seemingly, for a very, very long time, and we're not even at the end yet. So we're now, what, 4, technically really 3 posts into this. There are 2 more to go in this episode, and then the 2 from yesterday's episode, until we have the sort of the finished story, I guess, up to now. So let's jump into the next one. Am I the jerk for asking how my boyfriend's convo with my mum about us getting married went? This was posted on February the 22nd, 2024. So just 8 months ago now at the time of recording. I'm in a wonderful relationship, but have a very tumultuous home life. My brother and I do not get along because he is insanely toxic, but he lives with my mother and I. We co-own the house because she can't find it in her heart to kick him out, and I get no say in the matter. It's been 6 years and he's finally taking steps to move out, supposedly leaving in May. The trouble started when my boyfriend took my mother out to tell her he was going to ask me to marry him. As they chatted, my mother devoted about 20% of the conversation to talk about my brother. Now, the first portion was understandable. She wanted to inform him of the family dynamic he would be marrying into. I have a very strained relationship with my father and my brother because they're both narcissistic jerks. She wanted to make sure he knew what he was getting himself into. But then she said she wanted my boyfriend's help to get me to be the bigger person and mend my relationship with my brother. And she said she'd like his help to get through to my brother, such as asking my boyfriend to talk to my brother on her behalf. When my boyfriend told me this, I felt gutted, Putting all of that responsibility on his shoulders and focusing on my toxic brother was so hurtful. And what made it worse was she kept saying, I know he's a jerk, but... Now, despite how angry I was, I decided not to talk to her about it. I decided that whatever her motives were, I wouldn't let it put a damper on our moment. However, my mum came up to me yesterday and asked if I knew about the lunch she and my boyfriend had. I told her yeah. She asked if I was mad at her, and I was honest. I said I had been because of her devoting so much of the conversation to my brother. She exploded at me. She said I had no right to ask about her convo with my boyfriend because it was private and she didn't know she was getting graded for what she said. I told her I reacted the way I did because 1, it was meant to be about me and my boyfriend, and 2, my brother is not his responsibility. She said, your brother is going to be his brother now. She acted as if their convo was supposed to be a secret. She was seething because I had the audacity to ask my boyfriend how it went. Why wouldn't I want to know that? And unless she and my boyfriend agreed it was an only between them conversation, I don't see why she could be so angry at my boyfriend for telling me. I don't know. Am I being self-centered here? Am I the jerk for asking my boyfriend how their convo went in the first place? Or am I the jerk for being honest instead of lying to keep the peace? Okay, interesting post here. And actually, this is the first insight I think we've had in every post that I've read from this user into her mum, I would say. Now, you can probably argue that I've been potentially a little bit naive in not focusing on the mother at all until this point and her enabling behavior. But to be fair, like the bad guy in all of this really has been the entitled brother. But this is the first insight into sort of explaining and yeah, us understanding how your brother has been allowed to be so entitled for his entire life, and shows us why he is as entitled as he is. Clearly, yeah, I mean, if we didn't know already, his mum has been enabling him his entire life, which is just pretty sad to see, to be honest. But yeah, just actually answering the questions that OP's asked at the end. First of all, are you being self-centered? Absolutely not. I mean, that's obvious. Then, are you the jerk for asking your boyfriend how the conversation went in the first place? No, of course not. I mean, like, if my like girlfriend or my fiance or, you know, whatever, the person that I'm going to marry at some point, obviously, was having a conversation with my parents about what that was going to look like, I'd obviously be like, oh yeah, how'd it go? Like, obviously. And I'd find it very weird if she then came back to me and said, yeah, it was all right, but I'm actually not allowed to tell you because your mum and dad don't want me to say. I'd be like, okay, that's extremely weird behavior from them. But then the final question, am I the jerk for being honest instead of lying to keep the peace? No, because what does lying to keep the peace actually achieve in the long term? Nothing, in my opinion. I think, yeah, the more and more we hear from OP about her family, the more and more we realise that maybe, despite the fact that her mum probably is quite nice in general, maybe she's the only one that actually has some sort of common sense. I don't know. Maybe I'm going too far. Maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh on her mum, but I don't know. People who are entitled are often only entitled, or at least are entitled mainly because of other people enabling their behaviour. Like, it's very rare that you just see a random entitled person and they'll just be entitled for the sake of it. No, I don't think anyone is genuinely born entitled. Normally, it's other people in their life that have made them like that, or things that have happened to them at the very least. But yeah, there we go. Now let's move on to the final post of this episode. What should we even call this? Like, it's sort of like the prequel to yesterday's episode, I suppose. This one was posted just 7 months ago. Entitled brother finally got what he deserved. I am a 31-year-old woman, and I'm in shock over the throwdown that I witnessed between my mum, who is in her 60s, and my entitled brother. Ooh, this is interesting. Maybe the mum does have a backbone after all. Let's see what happens. My brother has been mooching off of my mum and she and I co-own our house, since 2017. He lived rent-free for 4 years. Finally, my mum managed to force him to pay his form of rent by paying some utility bills, a total of about $450 a month, since 2021. He's never paid his bills willingly. Every month he demands to know why he has to pay the amount and demands proof of the cost, as if my mum was trying to swindle him for some reason. And every time he's finally given us the money for the bills, he's told us he was bailing us out since we must be broke. Why else would we be making him pay for us? Now, recently he's been going off about how he can't wait to leave the house and he wants to save his money to move out, but he simply can't with the cost of all these bills weighing him down. My mother told him since he's so serious about moving out, she will gladly pay for his portion of the bills. She works seasonally, and all he'd need to pay was his car insurance. She said she would give him until May 31st to save up as much as he could. He'd then need to move out. Since that agreement was made, my entitled bro has gone on 2 trips out of state. One was a 4-day bachelor party in New Orleans. He's gone to poker nights with his friends multiple times, refuses to so much as wash a dish, and leaves a greasy mess wherever he goes in the house. Meanwhile, my mum has worked 6 days a week to make enough money to cover his expenses, and yet he hasn't thanked her once. Every time she asks him to do the simplest task, he ignores her or claims he forgot, despite how often she reminds him. Today, she finally snapped. His one bill that he's responsible for was due 4 days ago and he never paid her. She texted him and reminded him verbally many times. She asked via text one last time today, and he finally responded by asking her to give him a receipt so she can prove his insurance cost what she claimed it cost. And he never sent the money. She lost it and said she's sick of catering to him without so much as a thank you. She said she wants peace and he is no longer worth the trouble she goes through. She said she is removing him from the car insurance tomorrow and that he no longer has until the end of May to move out. He actually has 3 weeks. That's it. And remember guys, this was posted on March the 21st, 2024. So instead of the end of May, we're looking at halfway through April. Half the time. Actually, no, way less than half the time. 3 weeks rather than what? 9 weeks or so. She's threatened to kick him out before and hasn't gone through with it yet. But this time felt different because I've never seen her go nuclear like that before. And my entitled bro must have felt that same way because he went through the 5 stages of grief about 100 times during that fight. He screamed, cried, accused, name called, tried to pull me in to defend him, tried to pull in his dad, who lives 2 hours away, to defend him, tried to call my mum's sisters to defend him, claimed getting his own insurance was an emotional burden, claimed she needs professional help because she is obviously out of her mind, said that she obviously doesn't care about him, otherwise why would she so cruelly deprive him of such valuable resources. He went on for 3 hours and she didn't budge. I don't want to get my hopes up that she'll stick to that 3-week deadline, but this is the closest she's come to evicting him. I hope this will scare him into leaving before she has to. Well, there we go. You know what? I hold my hands up. I was wrong about this woman. Maybe I was right, to be fair, actually, in a way. But she has just got to the end of her tether, which I respect. I pay rent, so I own this house. Backstory. My parents used to own a house on a big bit of land. When my older siblings went away for college, the house felt too big for our needs. So my parents decided to sell the house, but not all the land. They built a smaller house on the part of the land they didn't sell. A few years afterwards, we moved to a city 2 hours away and kept the house as a place to go during the summer. My parents decided to rent the house as it was well located and had a really nice view. Renting it meant that they could use the money towards the mortgage and taxes. Enter our Karen. Karen and her boyfriend rented the place so she could be closer to her work. From the start, my dad made it clear. The place was for rent, and my parents planned on living in that house after retiring. At that time, both of them planned to work for at least another 20 years. They would of course notify Karen in advance when they wanted to take back the house, so she'd have plenty of time to find a new place. In return, they asked that she notify them in advance should she wish to move out so they could find a new renter. The lease also stated that my parents would have some of their things in a locked storage in the basement as well as in a shed on the property, and that they would always call Karen before dropping by to get something out of the storage, which was in the basement and connected by the garage, so they wouldn't even disturb Karen. For a few years, Karen was an okay renter. She paid the rent through a check each month. Yeah, she smoked inside and didn't take care of the land, but my dad didn't make a fuss about it. The real trouble started after around 12 years. Every few months, Karen's checks would bounce back. My dad would call her to ask about it. Karen would profusely apologize and rectify the situation. Then it became every other month, until it was every month. Finally, my dad had enough and called her about the lease and the rent. During the call, Karen argued that since she had been paying rent for the past 12 years, the house was now hers. My dad was shocked since that came out of nowhere. He tried to explain to her that she was renting the place like they'd agreed since the beginning. Karen went on a female dog fit about how she'd paid so much over the years and she was the one living there and taking care of the place, which she wasn't at all, and therefore it should be hers. She threatened to take my dad to court. Now, where I live, there are many laws which protect the renter, and it can be a real female dog to deal with when you have a nasty renter. My dad hired a lawyer to make sure everything was in order. After a meeting with Karen, where the lawyer was present, she realized she didn't have much of a case, since all paperwork concerning the house was in my dad's name and the original lease clearly stated it was a rental. My dad offered to her to stop renting, should she wish, after the whole debacle, but she actually wanted to stay in the house. He made her sign a new lease, where it stated, again, that this was a rental, and that should she not pay or cause trouble again, my dad would give her the shortest possible notice of eviction allowed by the law. Karen is still renting the house after almost 20 years. My parents are not close to retiring yet. I do hope it won't turn into a trash show when they decide to take back the house. Okay, now before we get into the 5-year update on this one, OP firstly did leave this comment below the original post saying, the question, why did your dad let her sign a new lease, has come up a lot from you guys, the people of Reddit, asking down below. So this is what I will say. 1, I don't have the slightest clue why. As I was a kid, I was a lot younger when this happened, I wasn't really kept in the loop much. It was also not the reaction I'd expect my dad to have, since he is very respectful to others and expects the same in return. Secondly, I do know the legal actions he took when she threatened to take him to court did protect himself and many future problems that might arise. I do appreciate all the concerns and the advice, although I do think my dad had a good reason to keep her as a tenant from hell after everything that went down. Okay, very interesting last line here, and I don't really understand it. Surely your dad didn't have a good reason to keep her as a tenant. Like, I kind of get it. Like, maybe at the start it was fine and, you know, money was coming in and yeah, it was a little bit of effort eventually, but like she was paying most of the time. But then surely by this point, when it's getting as ridiculous as this and you're having to chase her every single month, and then on top of that, you're getting her threatening you to go to the police or whatever about it and make it into a real issue. Surely at that point, it's worth the extra effort to say, okay, you're done, let's get another renter in. I know landlords don't like the turnover of having new renters, but when it's someone like this, that makes no sense to me at all. Surely you'd get her gone. I don't know. I'm not your dad, OP. Just makes the most sense to me. However, the beauty of your dad continuing to have her as a renter, as a tenant, is that we got this update 5 years later, posted just 3 days ago at the time of recording. Okay, so here we go. Here is the update. OP says, this is an update of a post from 5 years ago. Some people asked in the comments what was going on, and there has been new developments in the last few months. So here is the timeline. Since the beginning, there was a mutual agreement between Karen and my parents that they would both give a 6-month notice before she moved out, or my parents would like to take back the house. So let's move forward to the last week of June 2024. My dad received a phone call from a representative of Karen. Due to her financial circumstances, she was giving a month's notice before moving out. My parents were surprised by the short notice, of course, but didn't actually really mind it, as they were looking forward to taking back the place. Skip forward to the last week of July. Karen was set to move out, but then asked for a week extension as she couldn't find anybody to help her move. My parents agreed. She was now set to move out by August the 3rd. Skip forward to August the 4th. With the car all loaded up, with essentials, dinnerware and cutlery, small furniture, we left for our first trip to the house. The plan was to look at the state of the place, clean up a little bit, and take measurements for the remodeling my parents are planning. As we get to the place, we notice a small sign in the driveway to advertise for a garage sale at the house. We figured she'd forgotten to take it down, but we were wrong. As we get to the house, we can see boxes and furniture through the windows. Cue the shocked Pikachu face as she answered the door. It turns out she hadn't moved out yet, and she meant to call my dad to let him know, but of course she never did. She clearly didn't expect us to drop by so soon after her supposed moving date. My parents were both extremely annoyed, but they gave her an additional week and expectations of payments for the week she overstayed. Your parents, by the way, are extremely lenient. I mean, I'm pretty sure other landlords would say, no, you're done. Like, just get out or I'm calling the police. You're now 2 weeks overdue. Pay us for those 2 weeks and GTFO. But no, your parents apparently are too nice for that. Let's move forward. Honestly, it's bordering on like genuinely being too nice to the detriment of them. Like there's being nice and then there's kind of getting walked over. Let me know in the comments, by the way, guys, what you think about that one. But yeah, August the 18th now, let's move forward a couple of weeks. My parents received the confirmation that she left the week she was supposed to. They had a neighbor drop by to make sure her things were really gone, but we didn't have the time to make the trip until a week after. We found the place in a much better shape than we expected. Of course, it's not in perfect condition, as it clearly has the wear and tear of a place that's been lived in for years. It needs a good cleanup, some fresh paint in most of the rooms, and a lot of work on the land. There's also plans of remodeling a bit to make an additional room on the first floor, so my parents don't have to go up the stairs all the time. So, turning over a new leaf. This ends the whole chapter. My parents got the summer house back years before they expected, and although the renter was difficult until the end, she mostly went away without all the trouble we expected. My parents are happy to take back the place and are looking forward to all the projects they have for it. They've been almost every week to clean and sort through the things we had stored there. My dad did a fresh paint of coat in some of the rooms, and they're looking for furniture. My brother went once and started to clear up some of the trees to get back the awesome view we used to have from the kitchen. My dad bought an old lawn tractor to help with the yard work and is excited like a little boy with a new shiny toy. We'd like to get the place cleaned and ready to hopefully spend Christmas camping there, as we most likely won't have a lot of furniture yet. Okay, fair enough. Maybe I was wrong actually there. Maybe the best course of action was what your parents did. Just being lenient, trying to make as little fuss as possible, perhaps in the knowledge that if they were really aggressive and, told Karen, like, actually, this is ridiculous, get out, that potentially could have caused a lot more drama than just doing what they did in the end and saying, you know what, fine, maybe we don't get paid for these couple of weeks, maybe she stays for a little bit longer, maybe it's more annoying in the short term, but long term, it's better if she just goes. I don't know, I'm still sort of the belief that she should have been kicked out a long time ago. She seemed like a bad tenant. But yeah, what do you guys think in the comments down below? Do you think OP's parents were just way too lenient here? Or ultimately, they were able just to have sort of one tenant the whole duration of the time they were renting the house, which is always a good thing. They didn't have to do that much work, and overall, it wasn't that annoying. I'm not sure. I think it would have been horrible and a lot of stress, but if they were able to manage it, which they seem to, then who am I to say that was a bad thing? Okay, now moving on to our next Entitled People story. Group admin removed me without warning, then reached out asking for a free trip. So this happened a few years ago during COVID. I don't remember which year, when I worked as a deckhand and lifeguard on a snorkel excursion boat. I'm a freediver and on occasion also spearfish, albeit rarely. A little before COVID, my friend, who is a photographer, added me to a dive group she's part of. I was excited as I didn't have many diving buddies and didn't like diving solo, so I thought I might make some new dive buds. My partner and I live with his parents, and his mother is super high risk for complications, so we were pretty strict about COVID precautions and social distancing. I decided to join one of the dive days with about 7 other people in the dive group. I figured it would be easy to social distance. It was my first time meeting these people, aside from my original friend. Before we even got in the water, I started to realize they might not be my kind of people. I tried to meet people, but most weren't interested in chatting with me. They made a circle to talk, and I ended up standing awkwardly on the outside, uninvolved, because they were almost shoulder to shoulder, and I needed to social distance. I tried to be involved in the topics, but it felt like cool story bro kind of thing, so I just kind of stopped trying. Well, after that dive, I decided I'd likely wait till COVID passed more to dive with them, unless it was fewer than 3 people, since none of them took any precautions. I still check in on the group a few times a week, in case something small was planned and I felt like joining, but most times it was larger groups or scheduling didn't align. Since I was reading the chats, I learned a bit more about this group, mainly that many in the group are vegan. They didn't like me asking if anyone would like to join a spearfishing session. A quarter to a half of them were anti-vax, that most were either photographers or influencers. I did have a few good friends in the group, but I'd met them prior to the group. I worked on the boat 3 days a week, but my captain wanted to hire another person to work the other 2 to 3 days a week. So I offered up the job in the dive group, since I knew mostly everyone could free dive the minimum 40 feet required for the job. Only one person was interested, but scheduling didn't work out. The admin of the group, we will call Maisie, ended up removing me from the group without warning. I didn't find out till I tried to find the chat and it was gone, so I asked her about it. She said she removed me because I wasn't participating in dives right now. I told the group I was only going to do 2 to 3 man dives till vaccines were available and or COVID was less of a concern. This was because most of the dives had been larger groups or scheduling issues, so yeah, I hadn't been participating much. She said she needed to make room for people to join the group that wanted to and that would actually participate. Ouch, but okay, fair. Sorry, I gotta interject here. That's not fair. Why is there a limit on a group chat? Like, that's not a thing. It doesn't make any sense. Let's carry on. I thought the fact that she didn't tell me when she did it was weird, but I just moved on since I still had my prior friends. Now, I never told them I also run the social media page for the boat company I work for. And a few days after getting booted from the group, I get a message to our company's social media from Maisie. Is she inquiring about the available position we need filled to help us get more business and survive COVID? Nope. She wants a free half-day excursion to the neighboring island in return for exposure, telling us how her followers will be booking our trip and she'll bring a boost of profits by promoting us. I can't say I was surprised. Disappointed? Yeah. I don't remember exactly what I wrote back to her, but this is the closest I can recollect. Hello, thanks for reaching out to our company. Unfortunately, due to COVID restrictions, our capacity has been cut in half to adhere to social distancing requirements. This has led to our demand rising, since what we could previously accommodate in one excursion must now be split into 2 trips a day at max capacity restrictions. You promised that exposure will increase our bookings, but without a contract showing hard numbers and an agreement to reimburse us if projections fall short of the agreed amount, we cannot warrant a free half-day excursion for exposure over a paying guest. We're also short-staffed and only able to operate 3 days a week at this time, limiting our income even more under the already financial strain of COVID. Local businesses dealing with these setbacks is widely known about, and we find it in bad taste to request free excursions or products from small businesses under this well-known strain. We can offer you a resident discount, but that's all. We hope you decide to support small businesses in this time. However, we understand that COVID has put financial strain on all. We do have positions open to apply for if you've had trouble finding work and making ends meet in these hard times. She never responded, and I never talked to or saw her again. About 6 months to a year later, the COVID restrictions lightened a bit for travel, and our location was drowning in tourists. Our already high demand skyrocketed, and we were doing 3 to 4 trips a day, nearly back to back, because we were still short-staffed. I busted my butt and I made bank. I was able to save up for a big purchase a few years faster than planned, and all I could think about was how if she'd taken up the job offer instead of asking for free stuff, they'd have a great job on the water and be making some great money. Well, that right there, in my opinion, ladies and gents, is the problem with influencers or people that call themselves influencers. Like, let's be honest, I don't think anyone that has any self-respect that is in sort of content creation or is sort of an Instagrammer or something like that calls themselves an influencer. I think they just use a different word. I think right now, like influencer, the term, has so many negative connotations because of people like this and people doing things like this that I would just never want to be sort of painted with that brush. I just call myself personally like a content creator or just media person because, you know, although in theory, yes, if you have a following, you can influence, and therefore I suppose you are an influencer. Like the term is just so disgusting because of people like this. And yeah, to ask for free stuff, I suppose is fine. For exposure, I'm not 100% anti it. You know, if someone does have a following, then it can actually be worth it. But you know, it depends on the individual, of course, and what they're actually offering. But to do it during COVID as well, when you know full well that everyone is struggling, and obviously a business that is run by, well, tourism, people physically being on the boat and doing stuff like that, like that obviously cannot run during COVID, is going to be struggling. Yeah, that's I agree with OP. That is in really poor taste. And the fact of the matter is, and what makes this great and potentially, yeah, good karma, is that you've made a load of money and she probably hasn't. I don't know. She might have done. It's just unlikely, let's be honest. But yeah, if she had just taken you up on the job offer and said, you know, actually, yeah, I could do some work through COVID, then she'd be doing unreal right now. And most likely she's not. I mean, the thing is, in general, and this is what, like, I don't think I've ever actually, that's not true. I have had some free stuff given to me before, but it's always as part of like a deal where they get something back, the company. I think the best thing to do is, if you are like an influencer and you want free stuff, which is fine, like you can get free stuff, have some sort of agreement in which like you will hit a certain number of affiliate links, or, you know, you will send a certain amount of traffic their way using your link. And if you don't hit that, then be prepared to sort of financially reimburse them for giving you the free stuff. I think that's fair. And if you back your audience to do that, and you back the fact that you are an influencer, then you should do that. Getting free stuff like this, or just demanding free stuff, yeah, I don't love it. Now for our last, but by far not least, Entitled People story of this episode. If you guys have been missing me doing a Karen voice, or just, you know, changing my voice up a little bit for some certain characters in these stories, then you're going to love this. Crazy entitled couple tries to run our delivery van off the road, then demands free catering. This happened sometime last year, but due to it being an open incident, I held off on sharing it until now. In late winter / early spring of last year, I got a call in from the delivery driver that someone had brake checked them on the main road into town, then sped off. Luckily, it was after delivery was completed, so nothing delicate was on board. I take down the plate, vehicle info, all the standard stuff for an incident of road rage. But before I can finish up the call, the brake checkers actually called in to our main office. Before I could complete the standard spiel, they immediately cut me off, screaming, "Hello, you've reached XYZ Kate. Your jerk driver tried to run us off the road." Now, I know our driver. They are the least aggressive, most careful driver I've ever seen. They regularly deliver precarious items like wedding cakes without so much as disturbing them. If anything, they're too cautious. They're not running people off the road. Excuse me, sir, but I don't think our delivery van would have tried to run you off the road intentionally. Were you perhaps traveling in the vehicle's blind spot? There are warning signs on the delivery van to avoid lingering in blind spots when the driver signals. This is about as far as I get trying to be diplomatic. Then the entitled woman gets involved. "Why are you defending this jerk? This is some minimum wage idiot that probably doesn't even belong in this country. Yeah, your driver tried to kill us, and you're making excuses? This is outrageous." "Sir, ma'am, please calm down. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of things." "Do you know who I am? I'll shut your whole operation down. You listen to me, you little R-word. You better be ready to give us some hefty compensation, or we'll take this to the police and we'll sue you. We have a party coming up, and if you'd agree to cater it for free, we might let this all go." I have no doubt the look on my face when I heard that out of the woman must have been one of the most exasperated faces I've ever made. At this point, I'm just pausing to try and process this bizarre demand. "Hey, stupid, did you even hear what my wife was saying? Do you speak proper English?" It's at this point I've had enough. I'd put the pieces together as soon as they complained about road rage. "Are you license plate ABDC 12345 gold 4-door crossover? Are you the jerk," insert racial slur, "driving that big stupid van?" "No, I'm not. But the driver called in you having brake checked him just before you called in. We just tried to stop the driver because he was a danger to everyone on the road." "Uh-huh. Well, we will see what the facts are once the vehicle's camera footage is reviewed. Our delivery vehicle is equipped with 360-degree recording. Just let me pull that up." "BS. There's no such thing." Unluckily for him, there is. It's similar to the 360-degree Tesla cam. Unfortunately, you can't pull it up for situational awareness while moving over 20 kilometers per hour. Thanks whatever safety bean counter thought that needed to be locked out. I pull up the footage from the fleet management software, then proceed to see the gold car in question, not just travel in the blind spot, they were fully behind the vehicle, then sped up to try and cut it off when the driver turned on the signal to change lanes. "Sir, I can clearly see that your wife in the driver's seat sped up after the driver signaled intent to change lanes, entering the vehicle's blind spot. Then, instead of slowing down when the vehicle started to change lanes, you kept trying to push up until you were forced onto the shoulder. No, that's not what... Don't interrupt. I can then clearly see you zip into the left lane, overtake the van, merge in front without signaling at an unsafe distance, then slam on your brakes. After reviewing this footage, I think it's a great idea to get the police involved. The woman then splutters and tries to come up with something to say, and the man then just says, "Hang up the phone, Karen." They disconnected the call, and I had a good laugh. Then I made an online police report. I'll bet their insurance premiums will never be the same again. In my opinion, right, it's just so stupid that these people didn't realize or didn't even think for 1 second that there's a pretty decent chance that this delivery van would have some form of camera, whether it's a dash cam, whether it's something that's more advanced. Like, it just feels like every sort of company van or car these days is likely to have some form of camera just to sort of protect itself in a situation like this. The fact that they're trying to just sort of con this company into getting free stuff is just very, very weird. I mean, even the fact that there could easily have just been a camera just on the road. I don't know where this took place, but I don't know. In England, for example, you're very likely to be on at least a camera, a traffic camera, if you're in like a popular place or like a, you know, not even a popular place, just like a city, for example. So who knows where this took place and whether that's different in the country that this took place in. If it's America, yeah, fair enough, it probably is different. But still, like, you just outright lying to try and get something for free is so dumb. And also, what they did was incredibly dangerous driving, and yeah, I'm sure that they will be charged for this. How my entitled late aunt lost everything. Buckle up, because this story is an absolute doozy that spans nearly 4 years. Some backstory that's relevant to the story. In December of 2020, my father agreed to put his mother into a nursing home to protect his sister, my aunt, from an elder abuse investigation and getting my grandmother moved into state care. Because of my aunt's negligence, my grandmother had been hospitalized 3 times in 2 months. Once for a severe UTI, another time for an infected wound because my aunt secured my grandmother's diaper with duct tape, and the final time because of second-degree burns after my aunt left a heating pad on my grandmother's back overnight. Ironically, in October 2021, my aunt would end up in a nursing home after she burned herself with a heating pad, then didn't get medical treatment until the burn was badly infected. In January 2022, my grandmother passed away at the age of 94 years old. In my grandparents' will, they split their estate between their 2 children 50-50. However, because neither my father nor aunts was on the deed to my grandparents' house, it was signed over to a probate lawyer who would be tasked with selling it. When my father started going through his mother's affairs in February 2022, he discovered that the state was on the verge of taking the house because the only bills my aunt bothered paying were the electric and cable bills, and she hadn't paid property taxes since December 2020. My father also discovered that there were 2 massive liens on the house, totaling almost $200,000. One from the nursing home my grandmother had been in because my aunt hadn't paid them either. The other because my aunt convinced my grandmother to take home equity loan out on the house so that she could buy a car. Initially, she was only supposed to take what she needed for the car, roughly $6,000. However, my aunt went behind my grandmother's back and would end up taking the full $100,000 the bank offered them. My aunt had been able to co-sign for the loan, so she was authorized to take the full amounts. She also never made any of the monthly payments on that loan because she legitimately thought loans were money banks, just giving people free, no strings attached cash. My aunt never told anyone what she did with the remaining $94,000, but the rest of the family suspects that she gambled it away at local casinos. My aunt was also given full access to my grandmother's bank account, which she'd almost completely drained before my grandmother passed, meaning my father had to pay any outstanding bills from his own pocket, though he was eventually reimbursed by the lawyer. Goodness me, just 2 paragraphs in and already, what a woman your aunt is. Some point between late January 2022 and March 2022, in an attempt to buy herself some time to recover enough to leave the nursing home and thinking that the house couldn't be sold if somebody was living in it, my aunt convinced one of her friends to move into my grandmother's vacant house, unbeknownst to my father and the lawyer. As you can imagine, things got messy when my father found out. Initially, my aunt told my father that the man was there to take care of her 2 cats. However, even after my aunt was court-ordered to sign her 2 cats over to my father due to neglect and abuse, the man refused to leave. Both cats have been treated and rehomed and are doing well. Well, that is good to hear. We eventually found out that man had broken his lease, moved out of his apartment, and had nowhere else to go except his and my aunt's daughter's house, and who adamantly refused to let her father move in with her. Around April, my parents started to deep clean the disgustingly dirty house with the man still living there, and he did everything in his power to obstruct my parents' efforts. He'd call up claiming he was sick with COVID, which my parents almost always called his bluff on since he was physically disabled and never left the house, nor had anyone but my parents visit. One day, he told my mother, well, Sharon, who is my entitled aunt, said we'd be able to live here forever, and that my father didn't have the balls to kick me out. Well, my mum told my father what had been said, and the very next day, my father gave the man an ultimatum. My father told him, either you leave on your own by May 1st, or I'll have you evicted. The man chose the eviction route because my aunt told him they can't legally evict a disabled person, and he believed her. He ended up having to move in with his daughter, who is no longer speaking to my aunt because my aunt has ruined that woman's livelihood on multiple occasions. But that's a whole other story. However, before he left the house, per my aunt's orders, he stole several valuable pieces of jewelry, including a box of rings that had been willed to her cousins. We were able to get the stolen jewelry back in late 2023 after the probate lawyer had to send police to retrieve it, which is another doozy of a story. I feel like, despite the fact that this story is fantastic, there's so much more to uncover in this story. Like, there's so many different intricacies and events that I would love to delve into at a later point. But for now, goodness me. Because of the whole squatter incident, we missed a massive housing boom where houses were selling for significantly more than what they were worth. And the house was put on the market during a slump and ended up selling for almost $150,000 less than what it was worth. And it led to another lengthy legal battle with my aunt because she refused to sell or throw out any of her furniture in an attempt to buy enough time to leave the nursing home until she was court-ordered to do so. Given what the house sold for and deducting the lien from the home equity loan, the lien the nursing home put on the house had actually been dismissed by a judge, the end figure that my father ended up with was just under $60,000, while my aunt ended up with just under $50,000. My aunt got less because the probate lawyer charged her more than he charged my father because she was the one who had drawn things out for so long. Around that time, my aunt had been deemed unfit to make decisions for herself by a judge and several of her doctors, and ended up signing her half of the inheritance to my father to avoid losing it to the nursing home that she was in. My aunt passed away on August 1st at the age of 68 from multi-organ failure caused by years of heavy smoking, ignoring her diabetes, and refusing to consent to a surgery that would have likely saved her life. We didn't have a funeral for her. We simply had her cremated, and her ashes, along with pictures and other personal belongings, were given to our older daughter. My aunt's younger daughter tried to sue my father for the rest of her mother's inheritance, but the suit was quickly dropped since the money my aunt had inherited after her mother's death had already been signed over to my dad. So my aunt's daughter had no right to it. Our one saving grace in this whole fiasco was that my aunt was in a nursing home for the entire process. Otherwise, it would have been significantly messier. There's a lot I didn't go into for the sake of not typing out an almost literal novel, but I'll gladly elaborate on anything I can. Thanks for reading. Okay, goodness me, what a story. I can't quite believe that someone like that exists in your life, OP. But all I can really say is fair play to your dad for actually sticking with this and going through it, using so much of his own money and eventually ending up with really not that much for all his trials and tribulations. Although I am slightly surprised that there was any inheritance left after all of this. But wow, I mean, earlier this year, my granddad died, my dad's dad. And my dad and his brother, my uncle, have been working pretty hard to make sure that, you know, all the money goes to my granny correctly and goes through probate, etc., etc. And yeah, like going through different bank accounts and seeing what's owed and yeah, making sure everything's all right. I've never had any experience of that myself, but while reading this story, all I could think was, if one of them was against the other one and like was trying to put money into different places or was trying to take money, my granny's still around, so like the money was always going to go to her. But I mean, like, say she wasn't and the two of them were against each other, how would you ever come to some sort of conclusion or agreement. I mean, like, imagine if this woman was involved, this horrible aunt of yours, OP. I can't imagine that the stress and the workload that would have to go on top of what already seemed to be, from my perspective anyway, a lot of work. But yeah, I guess this is not a one-off thing. People argue over inheritance all the time. Maybe not to this extent though. And also I would say, actually, can you consider writing that novel, OP? Thank you for submitting it. Great story. But as I said halfway through that, I feel like there's so much more to unpack here, so many more events. I would read a short story based on your life and in particular, your aunt's. All right, now moving on to our next story submitted by one of you guys. Just let the kids sort it out themselves. Okay then. Backstory. I live in a town in the Netherlands with a university, and a few years ago, my girlfriend's cousin got accepted as an overseas student. My girlfriend is Japanese. Her family, father, mother, her sister, and herself, moved to the Netherlands while she was younger. Her cousin still lived in Japan when she applied, got accepted, and is now living in a student room in the Netherlands. We don't really have dorms here, like in the US, but the building she lives in is maintained by the university itself. Said cousin is doing quite well for herself, got good grades, and is well on her way to get her diploma. Partly because of this, the overseas family decided to have their vacation in the Netherlands this year, both for leisure and a bit of a family gathering. This story takes place during that family gathering. My girlfriend's parents and the cousin's parents, plus yet another family, had a meeting in a restaurant in my hometown. They had 2 little kids in tow, sisters. They looked like 8 or 9 or so to me, but my girlfriend later told me they're actually 11 and 12, but did look younger than they were, probably also because of their school uniform. At least that's what it looked like to me. I really don't know. Anyway, the idea was to catch up with the family, and my girlfriend was asked if she would be willing to keep the 2 young kids busy for a few hours since she was the oldest of the lot. My girlfriend and me are in our 40s. Her studying cousin is around 25, and as said, the 2 kids are 11 and 12. Now my girlfriend didn't mind, but did ask me if I wanted to come along as well. Her cousin didn't mind. The 3 of us had met a few times before already, and well, it was all about keeping the young kids busy anyway. Oh, for the record, the 2 young kids basically only speak Japanese. They do understand bits of English and can even speak some, but it's mostly Japanese. My girlfriend's cousin speaks both Japanese and English, and has even learned quite a bit of the Dutch language as well. Seriously, for the few years she's been here, it's, in my opinion, quite impressive. My girlfriend speaks Japanese, English, and Dutch, and as for me, Dutch, obviously, and English. But over the years, I've also managed to pick up a decent bit of Japanese as well, and I can often, not always, understand the general gist of things, as long as it's not too quickly spoken or too complicated. So, basically, it was all English and Japanese between us. Right then, let's get into the story now. A bully shows up. We took the kids for a walk through my hometown and they were quite interested. But when we went past a playground, that also quickly got their attention. So the 3 of us decided to go and sit on a bench and let the kids have some fun. There were several activities like an air balloon castle, swings, a sandbox for younger kids to play in, just plenty of things to do. The 2 wanted to go into the castle, which was fine with my girlfriend as long as they made sure to only use the entrance and exit, which was located on our side, so they wouldn't get lost and we could keep track of them. The 3 of us talked quite a bit, but also kept eyes on the castle. So, around 15 or so minutes later, I spot the 2 again by accident near the exit with a little kid in between them. I have no idea, but I'd say she was around 8 or so. I can't really tell exactly what's going on, but I did see the kid point to the area of the sandbox, and that's where the 3 of them headed next. Before I can say anything to my girlfriend, a young lady walks up to us and asks, in Dutch, if we have seen a little girl passing by. This seems way too coincidental to me, so I ask, is she wearing a pink dress by any chance? The woman's face lights up as I tell her that she seems to be with my girlfriend's younger cousins, and I point to the sandbox. But when we look over, we now also see an older boy near the girls. I'm not good with guessing ages. Let's just say that he was bigger than them, and he's clearly harassing them. The small girl is visibly crying, but is also comforted by one of the 2 younger cousins, while the other is keeping the boy away from her. We all walk over to the sandbox just when the boy manages to shove one of the cousins out of his way, and he's clearly trying to bully the young girl in the pink dress, but is now stopped by the other cousin, which is when we arrive. The woman who is with us berates the boy and tells him to stop picking on young children, but the little brat clearly isn't very impressed. The incident. The next moment, his mother, so I assume, storms over, yelling, and she has every appearance of a Karen, or a Toki as we tend to call them over here. A little argument ensues, mainly between the mother of the girl in the pink dress and our Karen, or Toki. It goes back and forth, but it's apparent that according to his mother, the brat did nothing wrong by picking on a girl half his own size, and this fine example of a mother even has the audacity to blame the other mother for raising such a weak little C-word. Basically, and then if you are Dutch, have a look on screen right now if you're watching on YouTube, that's what was said. And then the Karen says, kids will be kids, just let them sort out their own problems already. But she does take the boy with her as she walks away. The mother gets ready to grab her kid and leave, but in the meantime, the girl has completely calmed down and is actually having a great time with the two cousins. Unknown to anyone else yet at this time, my girlfriend decides to comply with the earlier suggestion. First, she asks the mother to reconsider leaving because the kids are having so much fun together. My girlfriend also comments how amazing kids are because they clearly don't speak the same language, yet they seem to understand each other just fine and are having a good time. The mother agrees, and my girlfriend now addresses both her cousins in Japanese, and it sounded very serious to me. Something about the tone, the way she talked, and also looked at both girls, even a bit sternly. They both nodded and clearly said, "Hi," aka "Yes, mom," apologies for the pronunciation there. I think I even saw a small head bow, but I'm not too sure. Our little group goes to sit on a bench nearby, and for the next 5 minutes, nothing happens. We're just having some small talk. Then the bully returns. The mother of the small girl wanted to stand up, but gets stopped by my girlfriend, who tells her that she has nothing to worry about because her kid is completely safe. Just watch. Trust me on this. The mother is visibly uneasy, but does remain seated, which is when I noticed that the behaviour and stance of the two cousins has completely changed. They seem much more confident and relaxed. The boy starts making a fuss, while one of the cousins stands up, points to him, and yells something at him, in Japanese, obviously. He once again tries to shove her out of his way, but this time she's faster. She steps aside, does something with her leg, and gives him a huge shove. Next moment, he's eating sand. No, literally. He gets up visibly angry with his face covered in sand. This time though, he becomes violent and actually tries to hit one of the cousins with his fists. Yeah, tries. She evades one attempt, then grabs his hand, spins it around, and the next moment the boy finds his arm twisted behind his back and he starts screaming. The other cousin now also stands up, pats the young girl on her head, makes another move, and once again the boy gets shoved to the ground, this time by both cousins. Hard. When he looks up, the other cousin actually makes a moving gesture as if she wants to kick him, but without actually moving her legs or anything. She's obviously just threatening him. My girlfriend pokes me with a huge grin on her face and tells me, surely that deserves a point for self-restraint. Don't you agree? She's visibly loving every moment of this. Apparently the boy isn't totally stupid and he runs off, while one cousin immediately turns to the young girl again, who is clearly still having a good time. Not the least upset with the bully. What was that in God's name? The mother asks. Oh, sorry. What the heck was that? She asks. My girlfriend tells the mother that her cousins are taking the same self-defense classes as she and her sister once did, and that she had decided to pull rank by telling her cousins that it was okay for them to actually defend themselves, as long as they didn't overdo it, of course. The mother wanted to know more about these classes, but unfortunately for her, my girlfriend had to tell her the actual school was located all the way out in a suburb of Tokyo, so not something her daughter would be able to attend. Mummy returns with a BOA, a guard. We're chatting some more for the next 10 minutes, after which the bully's mother storms over to us with a BOA in tow. BOA is Dutch for, I'm not going to be able to pronounce that, which basically means so much as being a deputy, but without the proper training nor having any weapons. Generally speaking, most of them usually handle ticketing people. He tells us that he has gotten a complaint from the woman about people beating up her kid, to which the mother of the young girl immediately snaps, "Whatever happened with letting the kids sort out their own problems?" Now the funny thing is, apparently the whole spectacle didn't really go unnoticed, and before we could say or do anything, someone else had stormed over as well. "I saw the whole thing, officer," an older woman said. Her brat, she said, pointing at the Karen, was harassing and beating the kid in the pink dress when these two awesome kids stepped in and protected her. Meanwhile, another man had walked over. Officer, that brat got everything he deserved. He started it. The only thing that happened was that those girls defended themselves from him. The officer listened to everyone's statements and ended up deciding to ticket the mother of the brat. I assume for disturbing the peace, but I don't know any details because at this time we decided to leave and went our separate ways. Aftermath. During our walk back to the hotel/restaurant, the cousins told us the whole story. And I actually learned something new as well. While they were in the castle, they saw the boy harassing the young girl in the pink dress and immediately decided that this wasn't right, also because he was almost twice her size. He actually pulled on her hair while she was already crying, which made the cousins plain angry. But the only thing they did was get the boy away from the girl. One cousin distracted the boy by blocking him from grabbing the girl's hair again, and she also started taunting him while the other comforted the young girl and led her to the exit, but the one we agreed on. So the girl's mother never saw her leave and got worried. The other cousin managed to lose the boy in the crowd, at first anyway, and she joined her sister near the exit. So I asked my girlfriend why they didn't do all that stuff right away, to which she told me that they weren't allowed to. The first rule of self-defense is apparently always leave if you can. And her cousins are at a level where the use of these techniques outside their school is strictly prohibited, unless there's an actual threat, of course, or if they've been given direct permission by an elder of the same school. A rule which my girlfriend was stretching a little bit, but she told me that she would write up the whole altercation so that the cousins could take her letter back with them. She was actually not kidding when she talked about points for self-restraint, because that would actually be her advice in the letter. But yeah, typical hypocrite behaviour. Let the kids sort it out until it suddenly doesn't go your way, eh? Yeah, let the kids sort it out is something you can pretty easily say when your kid is twice the size of the other kid that is in this altercation and is the one bullying them. Like, it's just ridiculous. But if you say that sort of thing, yeah, surely you have to just sit back and watch your kid just get destroyed by some good old martial arts self-defense. Like, if you say it, you got to stick by it, and ultimately applaud the kids. You know what? Reading this, it actually does make me think. Like, every kid, I think, should, if possible, go through some form of self-defense. I mean, this is just so cool. The fact that these two kids were like not really even that worried about this guy at all. They were trying to keep the peace, but they knew in the back of their minds if they had to use any form of self-defense, they were fine with it, and they would be able to do what they had to do to make sure that the other girl didn't get physically harmed. It's a pretty cool position to be in. Like, seeing how calm and collected they were when they were told they were allowed to use self-defense, and just knowing their ability, pretty elite. And they were just having a good time until they had to step in again, and then actually at that point get a little bit physical. But they weren't harming the kid, were they? They were just saying, no, back off, putting them in his place, yeah, with a little bit of physicality. But it's not as if they were like scrapping him, punching him. They just made him eat a little bit of sand. Who doesn't love that? My ex is so entitled. She thinks I should be paying bills for her and the guy she cheated with. I found out my girlfriend of 11 years was cheating on me with an unemployed dude, of all people. I'm not rich, but I provided her a good lifestyle. I paid most of her bills. I provided a nice place, nails and hair done regularly, dates every weekend, couple vacations a year. She got used to that lifestyle and wanted to keep living it, despite cheating with a broke dude. She didn't admit to the cheating. I caught on to it. Now, once it was clear I was done with her, the entitlement really started to show. She said because I had family in the area and she didn't, I should move out, but continue paying the bills to give her and the new guy a chance to get on their feet. She also insisted on keeping my dogs. She told me I could only see my own dogs if I asked the new guy. But since they didn't have any money, I needed to continue paying for food and vet bills. Instead, I kicked her out and kept my dogs. At that point, she was angry and still felt entitled to my income. After I kicked her out of my place, she claimed she was forced to quit her job because I forced her to relocate. And then she tried to sue me for lost wages, which didn't work out in her favor. Now, you'd think she'd stop at this point, but she didn't. She contacted my work and threatened to sue them, stating, "Your employees' actions cost me everything," and tried to insist they settle outside of court with her for $100,000. She didn't make that much money. Instead, my work filed harassment charges against her. You'd think she'd stop at that point, but she didn't. She started messaging every family member of mine that she could find, told them I cost her everything out of spite just because she moved on with someone else, and that the least they could do is send her money to help her get a place and pay rent. When that didn't work, she went online and begged for people to send money to her Cash App to help her with a place to live, and she claimed it was a domestic violence situation. I don't understand how she doesn't understand that any financial support I gave her would obviously end if she cheated on me. We weren't married, we don't have kids, I've supported her for years, I owe her nothing. I really don't owe it to her to help her and her new relationship get on their feet and establish themselves, which seems to come as a shock to her. When I read a story like this, guys, I genuinely do think, like, is this entitlement, or is it just being completely unhinged and just downright dumb? I just don't understand how you can possibly think that cheating on your partner and then trying to like take all their stuff and then saying, yeah, please continue to fund my life with the person I cheated on you with, is like, how can anyone think that and actually mean it? I mean, look, it's an ideal situation. Don't get me wrong. If you can get away with it, if you can cheat on your partner and then they continue to pay for your life, wow, you're doing well. But no, in all seriousness, what is going on? I mean, the comments here are saying to actually keep records and recordings of everything because of the domestic violence claim. That is true. People are saying it was a fun and amusing story until that moment, which is a great point. You actually need to sue her for slander or defamation, people are saying, because yeah, if that starts to snowball and she starts to do more stuff like that, and she, you know, makes those abuse allegations real and does go to the law, then you could be in a little bit of trouble. And it's stress that you don't want, so try and shut that down as quickly as you can. He tried to take my airline seat and lost. I was traveling to Las Vegas to meet up with some friends, and I pre-booked my seats. With this airline, they charge extra for certain seats. I chose a window seat with extra legroom due to my disability, which cost me an additional $45. When boarding, there was a man in my seat with another in the aisle seat. The middle was open. I checked my seat number and then politely told the man that he was in my seat, and I asked for him to move. Now, I'm a petite female, and both men were about 6 feet tall and over 200 pounds. When both opened their mouths, it definitely appeared like they both were used to using their size to get their way. The man in the aisle immediately told me that the man at the window didn't have to move, and I could sit in the middle. After all, he said, I shouldn't make a scene about it. Now that really peed me off. I didn't raise my voice, and I was very polite. I said I wasn't going to make a scene, but I was asking nicely for the seat I paid for. That is when he stood up and attempted to physically intimidate me. But here's the thing, I worked in frontline healthcare. I'm used to men attempting to use their size and mouth to intimidate, and this behavior doesn't work with me. So I decided to use another tactic. I turned my head to the man in my seat, and I told him that I would make him a deal. He gives me $50 cash, and I'll give him my seats. I told him I paid an additional $45 for the seat, and with tax, it should be around $50. He gives the money, and the seat would be his. This is when he turned to me in shock and said, "You want me to pay you $50 for your seat?" I answered, "So you're admitting that you knew this wasn't your seat. I'm going to call the airline staff and they can take you to your seat. After all, I booked this seat due to me having a disability," which is true, "and you're trying to steal it." I've got a butt in here at this point, guys, sorry. Even if you don't have a disability, if you book a set seat, that is your seat. It doesn't even matter if you've paid any more money for it. It's of course therefore up to you what you want to do with it, if you want to give it away or not, but you have the right to that seat. And I will say that throughout my entire time going on planes, I've never had something like this occur. Mostly people are pretty polite and, well, just normal and do sit in the seat that they've been assigned, but goodness me, some people are so entitled. Anyway, let's get back to the story. Everyone around us turned to look at him, and they didn't have kind looks on their faces. He turned 14 shades of red and moved to the middle seats. He pulled his hoodie over his head and sulked for the rest of the flight. His friend did the same. The moral of this story is simple. Do not use size and gender to bully others. It may just backfire on you and make your next flight a lot less comfortable. Yeah, as I said, I've never had this situation actually happen to me. I know I've read a lot of stories about this sort of airline stuff at this point. I've nearly done this for 6 years. So there've been quite a few similar stories, but Yeah, let me know in the comments down below if you have an airline story, because I don't, and I'm not a frequent flyer, but I've been on a fair share of flights and I've never seen this happen. So I'd love to know. Maybe this is just a thing that happens on like internal flights in America or something, which I don't go on. But yeah, let me know in the comments, have you ever seen this happen and how have you reacted? Entitled thief gets angry because he can't steal. This happened yesterday. I was at the car wash. It's one of those that you drive through and then park to clean and vacuum, with a couple of vacuum hoses on each side of every parking spot. Yesterday, they were fairly slow when I arrived. There were only 4 cars in the lot, including my van, out of 22 spots in the lot. I actually counted before I left. Like the other cars in the lot, I chose a spot away from everyone else so I could have both sides empty. Now, I'm male, but I carry a bag instead of using pockets. Think small messenger bag. I had my bag sitting in the passenger seat of my van when I opened both of the front doors and both of the sliding doors. This particular car wash supplies loaner towels for drying and cleaning, with buckets for used and dirty towels. Now, I just returned with a couple of towels when a guy pulls up immediately next to my van. That was annoying, since there were a lot of choices of other places to park, but whatever. Then I realised that my bag was easily visible from the property entrance and from the wash tunnel exit. So I went to the passenger side of my van to dry, clean, and vacuum that side. I then closed the sliding door and locked it, followed by locking and closing my passenger front door. About 30 seconds after I went back to the driver's side to work on that side, I heard someone pulling on my door handles. I immediately looked up, and unsurprisingly, it was the jerk that parked next to me. So I yelled over to him, "Yeah, I already locked the doors." He gets so angry that I can see him turning red, and he yells back at me, "F you, jerk." Then he punched my van, which hurt his hand more than my door, jumps back into his car, and tears out of the parking lot as fast as his little beater can go. I laughed and flipped him off as he drove away. When I went to look at the other side, I had no idea where he hit my van. There was no mark or dent of any kind. So I finished cleaning and I went to the store. I'm glad I locked my doors. You know what's actually really impressive about this is the fact that you clocked on to there potentially being a little bit of danger, like very, very early. I would have thought maybe in that situation, yeah, you would question like why is someone coming up, pulling up right next to you, but you might just think they're being annoying or just unaware, but no, you clocked it very, very early. What's crazy is rather than running away and fleeing as you'd expect a thief to do when caught, this guy actually just started swearing at you and saying, "F you, jerk, why aren't you letting me steal your bag?" And then punching your van. It's like he didn't even care about running away or getting away. He was like, "Damn it, I really wanted that bag. I really like the look of it." Very, very strange once again, but you handled that very, very well, OP. My neighbour doesn't buy her kids any snacks or drinks. We bought our house we were in 8 years ago. 2 months ago, my husband passed away from cancer. Don't worry, we are financially secure. But when we moved in, we started meeting the neighbours after we were settled in. There was one little girl who was about 4. As she got to know us, she started spending a lot of time with us. We took her on vacations, dinners, shopping and parks, etc. This little girl, Fran, even spent the night with us. I spoiled her and got her many treats and clothing and gifts. We then met her older sister, who was 10ish, who started asking for the same things. So I kept giving them sodas, snacks and food, etc. She soon started bringing her other friends over. I finally decided to put a stop to her and her friend, who was 11, and I told them that I'm cutting this gravy train off because I have to go shopping more often than I want. It was getting old, and I even complained to the parents of them about the older kids, hoping they'd stop their kids, but of course they didn't. So, 3 years ago, the older sister, Rachel, asked me what I am buying her for Christmas this year. I told her that's not happening anymore. The same night, she tried to set our house on fire. I was going to call the cops, but the mother said it would be too extreme and she'll deal with her and she won't be allowed to go anywhere for 2 months and she'll take away her phone, etc. I saw her going somewhere the same day and the days following. 5 days after I talked to her mum about it, Rachel sent me a text asking for $15. No apologies, nothing, just straight up. Have you got $15? I forwarded that text to her mum and nope, nothing. So I stopped acknowledging her when I saw her anywhere. I just ignored her. She started tossing things though in our swimming pool. My husband told them that he was done with their child and he put more security cameras around our house. She has major anger issues. She tried to get her guy friends to take out the cameras. And of course, we saw that and called the cops and showed them the proof. They talked to the boys, who said that Rachel had offered to let them feel her up if they damaged our cameras. Oh my goodness. My husband said if they ever come close to our home or vehicles, they'll be carried away in a body bag, which scared them. Sorry, why would you ever admit that someone had offered to let you feel them up? I mean, offering to let someone feel you up anyway is extremely weird, but then admitting that as well? Okay, this is all very, very strange. The family rented their house out and moved far away. But 6 months ago, they moved back into their house. I still ignore the free moocher. She kept sending Fran over to ask for so many things, which mostly include food, but wasn't limited to it, so she knows that I won't budge. Plus now, she is 17 and Fran is 12. The mother kicked the older monster out because she couldn't handle her. She steals from everyone and anyone. Stores, parents, friends, and neighbours. I blame the mother for not disciplining her when she should have. Now Fran has started following in the footsteps of her older sister as far as wanting snacks and drinks. She asked for bottled water many times. One day I told her that she should drink tap water, and she said she hates the tap water, and she started trying to bring a friend around. I saw the friend, Lauren, one day outside looking very hot. She lives several streets away, so I gave her a bottle of Sunny D. She left, and within 5 minutes, Fran was at my door, ringing the doorbell frantically and trying to open the door. I was watching from the cameras while I was handling some insurance claims for my husband's passing. I was emotional, and I ignored her. They left, but as I'm watching, she took her much younger friend's juice and she poured it all out. I guess she was thinking that if I can't get any, then she shouldn't either. Now, Fran is a very nice and thoughtful girl, but since she knows that I like her, she can just ask for anything she wants. Again, it's gotten old. 2 days later, they both came to my door in the guise of checking on me, but when I didn't offer them anything to drink, Fran started talking rather loudly, and she said, "I want Dr. Pepper," while her friend just as loudly said, "Me too." I told Fran that both your parents work, asked them to buy some for you. She looked shocked and said, "But I thought you loved me." I said that doesn't mean I'm going to give you things anytime you want. The younger friend had seen my DoorDash delivery once and we'd gotten KFC, and she told Fran that we had KFC and they came to ask us for some. I told her we got 2 bowls and my daughter and I shared and my son had one, and there was no chicken left. Now the mother is very aware of these demands that her kids make from the other neighbours. She's been separated from her husband for many years. She can buy high-end designer handbags, but other than giving her kids food, she won't buy them anything extra. I am grieving, and these people are now asking me for firewood to keep their house warm. It's not my job to do that. Their home uses oil for heat, and it's probably about the same price to fill it up as a Gucci handbag costs. I have central heating, but I also love the fireplace in the cold days. She doesn't prioritize. I don't know what to do because after telling them so many times that we aren't rich enough to feed our neighbours, I don't know. I don't want to sell my house, but they're freeloaders. The mum asked me to sell her our older van on a payment plan, but I refused to sell it. I'm emotionally attached to it because that was my husband's commuter van. It's only 2 months since he's been gone. I am not ready to part with any of his things for now. Any advice? Thank you in advance. Well, my advice to the UOP would be stop answering the door, block all their numbers. Maybe, if anything, you could actually just call CPS for a wellness check because I don't know what's going on in that house, but clearly something is not, in the wise words of Gary Neville, something's not right. Maybe that'd be enough actually at that point if you did that to actually get the mum to tell the kids to back off, because I agree with you, right? You don't just turn from a nice normal girl into this monster without some poor parenting, and it's very, very likely that the mum is just not doing enough here, let's be honest. But yeah, I mean, as far as what you can do with the kids themselves when they come round, I don't know. I would just say, like, on the one hand, it's obvious you want to be really nice to them still, and they should, in theory, be very grateful for what you've done for them in the past, but clearly they're not. I think at this point, you just have to say to them, look, I'm sorry, but you are no longer welcome on my property, and then give them nothing, which is tough because you spent years giving them stuff which their mum hasn't given them. But it's got to the point where you have to put your foot down, in my opinion. Entitled woman thinks she owns the drive-thru, throws a tantrum, and gets served by karma and the police. I'm at Chick-fil-A the other day. At this location, they have 2 drive-thru lanes. one for regular orders and one for mobile orders, where you skip the line if you use the app and scan a QR code. I always use the mobile lane because it's way faster. Well, not today. Enter the entitled woman of this story. She cuts me off pulling into the lot, red flag number 1. But whatever. There's no one else in the mobile lane, so it's not a huge deal. I pull in behind her and immediately notice she's not holding a phone to scan a QR code like a normal person. Nope, she's sitting there waving at the attendants. Newsflash, nobody monitors the mobile lane. So naturally, she starts laying on the horn like a lunatic. An employee finally comes over. Before he's even at her car, she starts barking out her order. And this is not a short one. This woman orders like she's feeding an army. After ordering, she drives off without paying. The guy literally has to chase her down to get her payment. Then she pulls up to the window where I'm still stuck right behind her, despite having scanned my code and being ready to grab my food in seconds. The employee at the window asks her to pull around to one of the waiting spots, but she refuses, saying, "No, it always takes longer if I pull around." The employee explains very patiently that pulling around won't delay her order, but it will let them serve the people behind her whose food is ready. But she responds, "It's not really fair to prepare their orders before mine when I was here first." The employee tries to explain how food stations work, but she interrupts, saying, "They should all be working on the first person's order. I know you just make minimum wage, but this really shouldn't be that hard to understand." After what feels like forever, the manager appears at the window. He leans out and very politely asks her to pull around, even promising to personally bring her food out as soon as it's ready. To top it off, he offers her a complimentary peppermint shake as an apology for the inconvenience. And this is what, guys, sorry to interrupt, this is what I hate about customer service. The fact that you have to sort of pander and make sure that customers like this are alright and still come back the next time. You should just be able to say, "No, F off, get out. I hate people like you. You're ruining my job. Why are you saying I'm on minimum wage? Why does that matter? Like, just go away." But no, it's in the interest of the manager, I suppose, to give her free stuff and, yeah, make her keep coming back. I just think it's a disgrace. Anyway, what does this Karen do? She knocks the shake out of his hand. It goes flying everywhere. On him, inside the window, total chaos. She even has the nerve to beep her horn at him. And this is why I feel like, people in customer service shouldn't try and help people like this out. Just say, "No, go away." Anyway, finally, karma starts to take hold. A couple of minutes later, 2 police officers walk around the front of the drive-through road, coming towards her. The entitled woman laughs at the manager, saying, "You really called the police?" The manager calmly responds, "No, ma'am, they were at the counter when I walked by, covered in the shake you knocked over. They also heard your shouting and honking. I told them it was fine, but they wanted to check on the situation." At this point, the officers reached her car and told her if she doesn't pull forward and talk to them, they'll arrest her for assault and move the car themselves. She finally pulls around, but doesn't stop. She just speeds out of the parking lot. The police laughed. She has a very easy to remember vanity plate, and they told the manager that they're adding obstruction of justice for failing to comply with a lawful order when they track her down. Now look, I know that not all posts here have happy endings, so I figured I'd share this one for the holiday season. Well, OP, thank you. Now there are a couple of edits that OP has added here. Firstly, they say, some people were confused about her not paying at first. What happened was she finished barking out her order and then just started to drive to the window. At this Chick-fil-A, you pay right with the person who takes your order, not at the window. Hopefully that makes it clearer. And the second edit, a lot of people are asking for an update, and I really wish I had one, but I don't even know what ended up happening myself. I was just another customer. I've tried looking up her vanity plate. Apparently I'm not allowed to share it here, but I haven't found anything related to it. If I do hear anything in the local news or get a flag for the vanity plate on Google Alerts, I'll definitely update. Thank you, everyone. And finally, here is the third update, which is interesting and includes, I've read a few comments about how the mobile drive-thru isn't different from the regular one, or how some people don't believe the shake could have gotten all over the manager. I used the word window when I probably should have said door. It's a hybrid window/door setup here. Anyway, I was there again today, so I took a couple of pictures of how it looks. This shows the mobile versus regular drive-thru, and it should be clear how somebody could knock a shake all over the manager from how they hand it out, which is just like how they're doing in these pictures. Now, I will explain these pictures to you if you're listening on podcast form or on audio platforms. But pretty simply, rather than in a normal drive-through where there is a window and the employee will pass your food through the window into your car, in this mobile lane, the employee gets out the door, like walks out the door. So they are physically standing next to the car. A couple of images here which show that, yeah, the employees are very close to you, like they're just standing outside your car door pretty much. So yes, if you did knock over a milkshake, as you can see in the woman in the second photo, she's carrying a drink, it would be very easy to knock that and just, yeah, splash it all over her. So crazy scenes, but I suppose that is what happened here. Okay, and there we go. Maybe that is one of the reasons why we have windows at drive-thrus rather than doors, for reasons like this. I mean, maybe not. I mean, this shouldn't happen. It's absolutely ridiculous. But again, like, comment down below, guys. What do you think about what I said in terms of like these sort of fast food chains or just customer service in general? Always saying that the customer's always right. There has to be a point where you just say, you know what? I don't care if we lose this customer's business for the rest of eternity, the rest of their life. It's not worth it. And I feel like we reached that stage before the manager got involved and was giving a free milkshake, right? I don't know. Maybe it's like, it's good to give people the benefit of the doubt. But if this woman was doing all that crazy stuff before the manager got involved, at that point, just say, look, move along. We don't want your business here. Pretty much never want to see you again, but that's fine, as we don't want to deal with you. Now moving on to our next entitled people story. Begpacker wanted to eat my lunch. Now, if you've never heard the term begpacker before, like me, apparently this is the definition. It's a traveler who asks the public for money to fund their travels. Often Westerners who decide to go to countries where the cost of living is low, but then ask the public for money to fund it. I mean, that is crazy. They beg for charity from locals, apparently, despite coming from the West to countries where the cost of living is much lower. That's mental. Anyway, let's get into the story. On Saturday, I, a 38-year-old woman, went out to meet my friend Jerry, who is a 38-year-old woman as well, in this small village where a lot of pseudo-hippies and pseudo-spiritual people hang out. Another friend, Brew, who is a 41-year-old woman, joined, and we were strolling around when Jerry bumped into a woman she knows. This woman, Lola, was obnoxious from the beginning and started following us around. I noticed Jerry was a bit annoyed by this, but she let it go. Lola stops and buys a big plate of food, potatoes, rice, etc. She starts eating with her hands and doesn't offer me any. I didn't think much of this as I didn't want it, but this is important for later. We finally sit at a bar/restaurant at around 2 p.m. Me and Jerry order a beer. Brew orders a tea. Lola doesn't order anything. Now, I'm mostly quiet, listening to the conversation. Lola asks Brew how she survives, how she makes money. Brew is a bit taken aback, but responds and asks, "What about you?" To which Lola says, "Well, I have no money at the moment. That's why I'm asking." Brew wasn't feeling well and went home. Lola asks the waitress for hot water, fills Brew's empty teacup with it, and starts drinking from it. Wait, sorry, wow, that's interesting. I just observed. Jerry and Lola are talking, but I already didn't like Lola much. Later I learned that she is one of these white European people who travel the world by asking for other people's charity. Mind you, I'm in a poor country, and this is the type of person who asks for a discount in a local farmer's market. The topic of their conversation was incredibly annoying to hear. Basically, she had a bunch of judgmental ideas around one-night stands, and Jerry was trying to tell her this was just a constructed belief. I did not participate. By then, it was 3 p.m. and I hadn't had lunch, just a small breakfast. I ordered a portion of fries, the only vegan food in the place. It arrives and I eat it all without offering any. Jerry casually mentions that I'm a Buddhist, and Lola then says that she is surprised by this fact, as I didn't share my fries, and that I am selfish. She said she was also a Buddhist and Buddhists share. I just laughed, and I asked her whether she offered me any of her food before. She stays quiet. Then I said she can order her own fries if she wants fries. My view is this: I'm a Buddhist, but not the Buddha. Fries can look like a snack for the table, but in this case it was my main, my lunch. She'd just eaten a huge plate of food. I don't feel I have to share my food with anyone else, and I don't see how anyone is entitled to my food. Also, being judgmental and confrontational are both not very Buddhist practices, but I'm sure she was not enlightened, so I don't hold anyone to the Buddhist standards. However, I can admit that I didn't offer any chips on purpose, and that I do judge begpackers. Well, that is the first I've ever heard of a begpacker, but goodness me, I don't really want to hear about them again. They sound like terrible people. Absolutely crazy. Not gonna lie, got no idea where this story takes place, but every time that I've gone to Asia or, somewhere just like in the Far East in general, which is where, generally most people backpack from the Western world, or they go to South America, which is relatively similar, right? It's much cheaper than Western Europe or America, like considerably cheaper. I mean, it depends where you go, of course, but if you're getting sort of normal standard food at normal standard places, it's a lot cheaper, to the extent that I've always been surprised and been like, oh wow, this is great. I'm not spending much money at all to get great quality stuff. It's way cheaper than when I'm here in the UK. So for someone to be doing this, or for begpackers to exist, is mental. I actually looked up like when this term first started, and there are a couple of articles about it from a few years ago. But yeah, it's there's not too much about it. I don't know. It's a terrible sort of thing that I just didn't really know existed. There's a couple of articles, and the titles say, "Is begpacking the worst travel trend of all time?" And there's an article from The Guardian, which funnily has the title, "Young, Entitled and Over There, The Rise of the Begpacker." Couldn't say it better myself. Great story. Now for our final entitled people story. A man wanted me to reimburse him because his girlfriend learned he cheated on her with me. Right, a little bit of information about me. Firstly, I live in Paris, France, where health-related expenses are usually pretty reasonable. And secondly, I'm sexually promiscuous, which means I do regular STI testing. I've mostly been lucky, except once where I got a mycosis in my throat. It was gone after only one day of medicine, according to the test I did a few weeks later. Of course, I immediately contacted all of the partners I had sex with since my last check-in, 3 months earlier, at least the ones who had not deleted their Grindr account, blocked me, or just whose contact I didn't get. Most of them thanked me for warning them and told me they'll get checked. Great. Except for one guy. He told me he doesn't use condoms with his girlfriend and asked me how is he supposed to tell her? She doesn't know that he cheats on her, nor that he has sex with men. Honestly, I don't consider this my problem. He also tells me that he's not legally in France and doesn't have social security, so he asked me to pay for the testing. It's around €10. Honestly, if that means it doesn't spread to other people, I'm willing to pay that price. I should note at this point that I'd forgotten that there are free STI tests all around Paris. I used to go there as a student, but my insurance covers private labs, and that means that instead of waiting for hours to see a nurse, I wait 20 minutes. The guy contacted me a few days later, letting me know his test turned out positive. He asked for money for the doctor and medicine. Once again, the amount is low enough that I can easily afford it, so I give him the cash to pay those things. Probably less than €40 for the doctors and medicine. The guy then tells me that he was living at his girlfriend's place, but she's kicked him out. And so he told me that I had to pay for his hotel. I told him I wouldn't, but he insisted, and that is when I blocked him. To be frank, I'm kind of sad for him. In the first place, because I hate the fact that people have to live with the notion that the police could force them out of the country, not find a legal job, and depend entirely on their partners. Still, I don't think that part of the implicit contract between men who have quick hookups with other men goes beyond the fact that we tell each other if we ever got an STI or warn them if they forget some things when leaving our apartment. Once, a guy forgot a ring. I immediately went to send him a message just to realise that he'd already blocked me on Grindr. This day, I guess I got a free ring. In particular, I don't think that a quick hookup means I'm responsible for paying for his hotel. Now, while mentioning this story to a friend of mine, they noted that, firstly, if he never got tested before, it's quite possible that he was the one who gave me the STI, especially since it seems he was surprised that you could get STIs from oral sex. More importantly though, for what we know, he never got the STI, or he uses it to get money out of other people. I've not asked for his medical bill or test results. There's actually no way of me knowing if he actually got the STI. Well, there we go. One of the top comments here says, if you give a mouse a cookie, he'll ask for a glass of milk. Very valid. And I didn't even think about that last point either. Like, there is a decent chance that this person didn't have the STI, but is just obviously trying to get as much money out of you as possible. Now, I will say that I think what you did was very fair and reasonable, given the fact that you thought there was a chance that you might have given this guy the STI. So, paying for his test, paying for the follow-up, it's very nice of you. Paying for his hotel, though, because he cheated on his girlfriend with you, that's probably a step too far. It's very, very funny, though. The audacity to ask for that is just great. I also do agree with you, the fact that, yeah, you can't work legally, depending entirely on the partner, etc., etc., and could get kicked out of the country at any moment. But then again, it's also sad that this guy is cheating on his girlfriend. So, karma is all I'm going to say. So there we go. That is going to do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and prepare yourself for more Entitled People content in the next year by subscribing. If you still haven't subscribed and you've listened to the last 3 hours of me ramble on, what are you doing? Get it done, and I'll see you in 2025.